take care of the preliminary. And Tish, if I get this wrong on the chat or whatever it is, a hand in chat. Let's see. I see we have full attendance for the board this evening. So pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023, on March 29, 2023, Governor Maura Healey signed into law an act making appropriations for the fiscal 2023 to provide for supplement certain existing appropriations and for certain other activities and projects. This act includes an extension until March 31st, 2025. The remote meeting provisions, March 24th, 2025 select board meeting will be conducted by remote participation by the board. The chair does grant permission to Westwood Media Center to record and I believe live stream this meeting and to anyone else who would wish to do so. I'd like to welcome everyone and thank you for taking the time from your busy schedules to join us this evening. We have a very full agenda. So tonight, if you have questions, we need your full name and address. You can post your questions in the chat room with your name and address. And if you wish to speak, please raise your hand. We will still need your name and address. Please wait till you're recognized and you will be allowed 3 minutes. Folks, if you have several questions, please bundle them together. If you have additional questions, we'll come back to you after I've given the others a chance to ask their questions as well.
Mr. Chair, just as a point of clarification,
Yes,
they should put those questions and comments in the Q&A section, not the chat.
I'll get it right one of these days, Rob. Thanks, Rob.
Good thing.
All right, chair's update, short update. Westwood Poet Laureate Lynne Viti. She has an original poem she'd like to read for us tonight. So Lynne, it's great to see you here. Welcome, and I'll let you take it away. You're on mute. There you go.
All right. Good evening, everyone. This is probably the last Westwood formal poem that I'll be doing as poet laureate because I'm on short time and starting next week, I think. So I'll be around and I'll still be doing programs, but this is my last formal poem, and it's the one that I've written to commemorate Founding Day. And it is called The Last High Street Trolley, 1924. Near the pines and beach of Sen Key, land of stone, stands what's left of the old depot, remnants of one wall, round stones, whitened by age and weather. I squint at the ruins by the
accessibility shortcuts.
Sorry. Go ahead, Lynne.
I squint at the ruins by the Sunoco station, trying to envision people buying tickets or having a snack at the soda fountain while they await the trolley to Medfield and point southwest. Beneath the surface of High Street, the tracks lie buried under layers of asphalt. The street railway's disappearance was inevitable. No one missed it. Only trolley enthusiasts who blamed Henry Ford and General Motors for autos fresh off assembly lines in Detroit that clogged the roadways, rattled along spewing black fumes. The trolley met its messy end in a snowstorm, stuck in a snowbank till spring, its conductors scrambling to find new work, because America was on the move. Drivers fixed their eyes on the road, glanced in rearview mirrors, back at the past of King Philip's War, the past of dairy farms, water-powered mills, foundries, back at that relic of a tired old century, the last trolley, rusting in the snow, awaiting spring and a tow to the scrapyard, without benefit of one last triumphant run.
Thank you, Lynne.
Welcome.
And the trolley, remnants of the trolley barns are still there. Well, you've done an outstanding job, and wish you and Tom the best, and think you've selected a great person to follow you. So thank you so much, Lynne, for
Really looking forward to it. I have a collection of Westwood poems that I'm probably going to publish in a small collection of poetry, all the Westwood poems I have.
Oh, great. Excellent.
Well, thank
Thank
you
you
for
so
that
much,
eloquent
Lynn.
history lesson. Yes.
That was beautiful. Thank you.
All right. Our next order of business is the chair's update. I'm sorry. Chris Coleman, the town administrator's update.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have one update. I'm excited to announce that our new Director of Veteran Services, Dan O'Neill, had his first official day in Westwood today. Dan will be in Westwood on Mondays. He's also available to be contacted to schedule an appointment Monday through Friday, and his information is on the website. I also want to thank David Farrell, a retired VSO who's been serving as our interim VSO for over the last 8 months. So thank you to both of them, and look forward to working with Dan.
Thank you, Chris. We're a little ahead of schedule. Tish, is Mr. Johnson here from the Westwood Little League?
I believe so. I just let him in.
Hello.
Is that you?
Yes. Hello.
Hello.
How's it going?
Hello.
Good.
Lenny, my name is Joe Privatera. I'm the chair of the Concom, and we're delighted to have you here. We're looking forward
board.
to I do it
Mr.
again.
Chairman,
Gee,
you're chair of the select board. You
I'm
were
working
former
on it.
chairman of the Concom.
It was that walk down memory lane with Lynn and all the history. That's what it was, Joe.
Yeah, that thing about old dogs and new tricks.
Yeah, there you go, Joe.
Anyway, Lenny, you're here to tell us about the upcoming Little League parade, if you'd be so kind.
Yes. Is it possible to share? Let me try to do that without screwing this whole thing up. How's that? Does folks see my screen now?
Oh,
Coming. Yep, it's coming.
Yes.
Oh, excellent. All right. Well, thank you. Appreciate it. This is a great event that we look forward to every year, and appreciate the time from everybody on this call. So we're looking to schedule the parade for May 3rd. Easter set us back a little bit this year, so May 3rd is the date that we're targeting. We're looking to go back to the parade route that we had previously, was from the Hanlon, but now the Pine Hill School. So same approach. We have coaches and players arriving between 8:30 and 9, and then we step off at 9. And we have activities that are back at Morrison scheduled for later that day after the parade. And talking about a rain date. Hopefully it doesn't rain, but if it does, we would ask if it could be May 4th, the following day. We've reached out to DPW, police, and health, and the water department, fire department, and police departments as well. And then just going through some of the other items, the route is similar to what would be we did in the past. You come off Gay, down Pine, slight right onto Schaefer, and then left onto School Street, and then continue into Morrison down East Street.
And Lenny, you guys always have somebody special keyed up to throw out the opening pitch for the start of the season. You have anything special arranged this year?
Yes, we're lucky enough to have a member of the Sheen family throw out the first pitch, which is great, and we're looking forward to that. We also have the high school varsity teams for baseball and softball that'll be there in attendance, and they line up on either side of the bases when we have our ceremony. We play a game. Yeah,
It's awesome that you have Officer Shee gonna, as a Westwood Little League alum too, right? Throwing out the first pitch, and this is the 50th anniversary of his grandfather being killed in the line. So I think that's a wildly appropriate opening day, first pitch toss there. And hey Joe, I know you served in public safety with Officer Sheehan when that tragedy occurred. I think it would be fantastic if you were the one to address the folks at the event on behalf of the select board.
I'd be on it. If you guys are okay with that, I'd be happy to do that.
Absolutely. Yeah, we'd love to have you. And anybody else that wants to join as well.
Bill was a great guy, just a great guy. He used to stop into the station and he talked to his brother Paul. Paul and I were on the ambulance together. And and you talk about baseball. Pat, I know will get this, and Rob, you might, but Bill had arms like Harmon Killebrew. You, the guy, I'm sure he could hit it out of Fenway. He was just massive, and he was just so calm, and he didn't say a lot, but he was a good listener. And I won't go into all the details, but I told the chief about this, but he was ahead of his time when it came to juvenile diversion. He was really pretty exceptional, and we can talk about that offline. But I think that's great having the grandson there. I'd be honored to participate. Thank you.
Sounds good.
All right. Do we have any questions on this from anybody? And Rob and Mary Ann, do you guys have anything you'd like to say?
No questions. Lenny, thank you for all your work in organizing this again this year. I'm so pleased that we'll be seeing Little League at Pine Hill soon. That's very exciting. And excited that you'll be starting off from Pine Hill. I'm happy to bring a motion.
Please.
You ready?
Yes.
I move that this board approve the Westwood Little League Parade for Saturday, May 3rd, 2025, with a rain date of May 4th, 2025, contingent upon final review by the Health Department, Recreation Department, Public Safety, and School Departments.
I will enthusiastically second that motion.
Thank you, Rob. Roll call. Mary Ann?
Aye.
Rob?
Aye.
I vote aye as well. Thank you very much, Lenny. Look forward to seeing you Saturday.
Thank you. Appreciate everybody's time here.
Thank you.
Take care.
Good
Bye-bye.
night.
Have a good one.
Next, we have a continuation of the March 10th, 2025 public hearing, Verizon New England Incorporated Cable Ascertainment. This is a continuation of a hearing. Do I need to do anything special, Pat, or is it a continuation?
You're on mute, Pat.
Not that I'm aware of, the meeting's continued and open, so you don't need a motion to open the hearing. But you can take any comments that anybody may have, additional comments at this point in time. And when we close the meeting, we will allow for additional written comments to be submitted as well. So I would ask for additional comments if anybody would like to make them at this time.
All right, why don't we let's give that a minute. And Melinda, do you have anything you'd like to say while we're waiting to see if the public has any comments?
No, just thank you so much.
Okay. Nice job, well done. Rob, Mary Ann, do you folks have any additional comments?
Not beyond what I said at the last hearing.
Okay.
Joe, you may want to read the opening statement if you have it from last week. Just put it back in the record.
And Joe, before you, well, okay, why don't you do that first, and then I do have a question for Melinda. But
Okay.
You do that first, so it's officially reopened.
Okay. Good evening. Welcome to the Town of Westwood public hearing on Verizon Cable License Renewal. This hearing is part of a cable license renewal process to ascertain the community's cable-related needs. Notice of this hearing was in the local newspaper 2 successive weeks, and notice is on the town's website. Copies of the legal advertisement are here entered into the hearing record as ascertainment hearing exhibits 1 and 2. By way of background, Verizon's cable license expires on July 16, 2027. Federal and state law requires holding public ascertainment proceedings, including this hearing. We will receive comments and testimony from the public and interested persons about what cable-related needs and interests are important to the public and about how Verizon has performed under its existing license. Before proceeding to the public comment, I would like to thank the members of the public, our team that is meeting with the Verizon and Westwood Media Center, the nonprofit community studio, and Verizon for their participation and assistance in ongoing license renewal proceedings. In this proceeding, we are open to accepting comments about all Verizon cable-related matters, including but not limited to customer service, license administration, the town's needs regarding the local studio, community programming, and public and educational governmental access, maintaining support for the town's very important local channels and video origination capabilities. Please keep your comments no longer than 3 minutes. Please note the process of accepting comments on cable needs and interests will remain open until this meeting, and you may still submit comments following this meeting to the Board of Selectmen. Select Board for the renewal record for the consideration by the town. The process of accepting written comments for the record of this public hearing will be discussed in further detail later this evening, but that may not happen because I don't believe it's necessary. At this time, we will proceed with going right to the public comment process, beginning with those who are panelists and then moving to participating remotely attendees. And that should, thank you all, and proceed to a hearing from the public and interested parties. I think I did the best I could with that, Pat.
Good job, Joe.
Rob.
Thank you, Joe. Melinda, just real quick, I know we spoke at length last time about, everybody's feelings about the important public service that Westwood Media plays in our town government and in just the town engagement in general. If people wanted to ensure that their elected officials beyond Westwood knew the importance that Westwood Media Center and all local cable access channels play in government transparency and community engagement, what should they do?
Thanks for that question. I think what they should do would be to write to Representative McMurtry as well as Senator Rush and let them know that, Westwood Media Center is a very important part of transparency. And, we offer so many educational services to residents and students, internships, and how important that would be, and what would happen if it went away and the things that we would miss. So that would be really helpful if you could write to both of our rep and senator.
And how about at the federal level? Do the same?
Absolutely. Congressman Lynch, Markey, and, everybody that represents us. I think it would be really important, especially at the FCC level, that they know, how important it is that this service would remain.
Thank you.
Thanks, Melinda. Are there any hands raised? Give that a second here. All right, Mary Ann, would you be so kind?
I would. I move that the select board close the public hearing and hearing record for the Verizon New England Inc. license renewal, which began on March 10, 2025, and was continued until today, March 24, 2025, and further, that after the closing of the public hearing and the hearing record of today, March 24, 2025, that members of the public may continue to submit comments on town cable license renewal needs for later review by the select board in a process for license renewal ascertainment of needs. And the board reserves the right to schedule and hold additional hearings and/or public meetings for review and consideration of such public comments, with a further note that residents can submit written testimony via email to selectboard@townhall.westwood.ma.us or via mail to the Select Board office at 580 High Street, Westwood, Mass.
I second that motion.
Roll call, Mary Ann.
Aye.
Rob?
Aye.
I vote aye as well. Motion carries. That brings us to,
Thanks, Melinda.
thanks, Melinda. public hearing on proposed amendments, licensing rules and regulations. We're going to discuss some licensing regulations for mobile food operation, permit rules and regulations, common victualler rules and regulations, Hackney license regulations. Nora is attending. Could I have a motion to open the hearing, please?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call. Mary Ann?
Aye.
Rob?
Aye.
I vote aye as well. Nora, if you would please.
Sure. So what you have before you is a recommendation for revisions to 3 sets of rules and regulations. The first set is the mobile food operator permit rules and regulations. The second is the common victualler rules and regulations. And the third is the Hackney vehicle regulations. So let me take them one at a time. The first one, mobile food truck permit regulations. Currently, the Select Board issues a permit to operators of mobile food trucks that want to locate at different locations in town. We have one mobile food truck that regularly receives a permit, and it goes around to different construction sites throughout the town, and it gives the town administrator's office the location where they intend to go and get specific permission for those particular sites after coming to you every year to ask for the permit itself to be renewed. More recently, we've had several food trucks that have operated out of the Bubbling Brook location on High Street. And last year, a number of food trucks operated as temporary food trucks. They got temporary food permits from the Board of Health. The Select Board's mobile food truck permitting regulations exempt temporary food truck licenses or food truck permits from review by the Select Board. This year, the Health Department is considering not just having temporary mobile food truck permitting, but also having something called a seasonal mobile food truck permit. And the reason they're doing that is they found it was rather unwieldy last year when Bubbling Brook decided to change its operations, and instead of having an internal restaurant, to go with food trucks. They had a number of different food trucks that came and went on different periods of time. And if they ever exceeded a 2-week period, they'd have to apply for a new food permit. That was not only a lot of work for the health department, but it was very expensive for each of those food trucks. If they were coming back from multiple individual temporary uses, they would have to apply again and again and pay a fee again and again. So we looked at what would be required if they instead had a seasonal permit that would allow them to operate at that one location, not moving around throughout town, but operate at one location for a season, where a season is defined as up to 6 months. And we discussed this with the health director and with the licensing agent, so with Jared Orsini and with Karen Flynn, and they came up with these proposed regulation changes. And it's really actually very few changes to the text of your regulations. It's simply where your regulations already exempt temporary food permits, this exempts seasonal mobile food truck permits as well. We think this will work out better for the businesses, better for Bubbling Brook, easier for our health department to navigate, and less expensive for the individual food truck operators. So just to explain the expense part, if these regulations are not changed and a seasonal mobile food truck has to come before the Select Board for its approval, the operator would have to pay a $100 fee to go to the Select Board to get its approval. Then it would have to pay a $250 fee to the Board of Health to have a plan review permit each time it wants to come for this annual fee. And then an additional, I believe it's a $100 fee for the food permit that comes along from the Board of Health. This would break that all down, require one stop to the health department for a fee of $150 for the full season. We think it's sufficient to allow those operators to plan for the season, to operate well at that location, and to still have all of the oversight that they need from the health department. So while looking at that, I'd also note that Karen Flynn also updated outdated references that were in the bylaws to Board of Selectmen instead of Select Board, and removed requirements for paper copies as well. So do you have any questions about that set of regulations before I go on to the others?
Bob, Marianne?
I do not. Thanks, Nora.
No, I think they all make a whole lot of sense. So thank you to Karen and you and the team for making those suggestions.
Great. And then the other two, so Common Vittler and Hackney, I can take them both together. They both have simple changes just to replace Board of Selectmen with Select Board and to remove references to paper copies. There are no changes to the way that those license requirements operate.
No questions for me on that.
Not from me either.
Thank you.
I don't see anything in the queue. Okay. Okay, Nora, we're ready for the last one.
No, that's it. That was just those three. Mobile food truck, Common Vittler,
Yep,
and
yep. Hackney.
Hackney. So Hackney, like Common Vittler, the only changes are correcting Board of
Select Board.
Selectmen board
Yeah,
and,
thank you.
paper permits.
All right. Since there's no discussion, would anyone like to make a motion?
I would. I move that this board approve the proposed amendments to the following licensing rules and regulations. Number 1, the mobile food operation permit rules and regulations. Number 2, the common vittler rules and regulations. And thirdly, the Hackney license regulations.
I second that motion.
Roll call, Marianne?
Aye.
Rob?
Aye.
I vote aye as well. Motion carries.
Thank you very
Marianne?
much.
Thank you, Nora. Could you give us a motion to close the hearing, please?
So moved.
And I second that.
Roll call, Marianne?
Aye.
Rob?
Aye.
I vote aye as well. Moving on to ambulance rates. And looks like we have Chief Lund here,
You do.
and looks like you're the star of the show, Steve. Would you
Yep, so I just want to propose the revised rates that I'm going to be proposing. For the mileage, we'll go to $55 per mile. BLS will be 2,100. ALS 1 will be 2,525. And ALS 2 will be 3,550. Just a quick, I spoke with our billing company since August through the end of February. ALS calls, we've had ALS 1, we've had 771 billed calls. ALS 2, we've had 16, and BLS, we've had 450. So it will take some time. It takes a while for the billing to happen. And then as you move forward, that's when they can make really good projections. Right now, they can't make great projections on what the increase will be because they just don't have enough sample size. So that's where we're going. And that's all I have.
and Steve, that was from August to when?
The end of February. I think we started in the middle of August. Like I said, there's more calls out there, but that's what they have billed and paid so far.
No, I know this is something you tackled immediately and recognized right away that it had to be addressed. So kudos to you for taking care of that. Rob, do you have any questions or comments?
Yeah, I do. Chief, I noticed that these revised proposed rates basically put us sort of at parity with Norwood. And I'm just curious, is Norwood the town that sort of adjacency that we have the most sort of back and forth mutual aid with?
Yeah, we go there close to 300 times a year. They come to us close to 100 times a year. So it only makes sense to match.
Yeah, so if we're going there, somebody in Norwood's get a discount, and if they need to come here, somebody in Westwood's paying this rate already.
Right.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Marianne, anything on your mind?
No, I am in support. Thank you very much, Chief.
And we have looks like 3 questions in the queue, Tish.
Mr. Chair,
Chris, yes, please.
just if Chief, You mentioned this when this was first presented to the board, but there was also hardship
Yeah, we have a
matters.
hardship policy. So anybody who gets a bill that they can't afford, they fill out a one-page form. If they meet the criteria, it's waived. If they don't meet the criteria, they can come up with a payment plan of sort. Residents don't get billed any copay at all. They would get billed a deductible. Again, though, if they couldn't afford the deductible, the billing company would work with them. Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid pay what they're going to pay, and that's just a known going into this. So we will work with anybody that is having any financial hardship whatsoever. We do not want this to become a reason for someone to not call the ambulance. We don't ever want anyone to feel that way.
Great point. And I know you put this in writing, Steve, so it's easy to read, very clear, well done. Very well done. You set, Chris?
Yes, Mr. Chair, thank you.
And if I may, Joe, I just wanted to reiterate the point that you made before, Chief, which is the biggest change with the change in rates is what the insurance companies are going to be paying us. Not what people are going to be paying out of their pockets, but what the insurance companies are paying, which they're already paying for rates in Norwood and other communities.
Correct. And our costs for medical supplies and equipment go up. One company, it's 5% a year. The other company was 2 to 3% twice a year. If we're not going after the commercial insurance company for that, then you're in effect paying for those supplies with tax dollars. So the burden comes back to the taxpayer that way. So this is a way of making the commercial insurance companies do their fair share.
And also just to reiterate for people who may be tuning into this discussion for the first time, I think this is the third time we've discussed this over the last couple of months, that we have not changed the rates in 5 years, but we had a prior discussion about looking at this on an annual basis going forward.
Correct.
Thanks, Marianne. Let me see if I can read this. This is from Ada Zong, 73 Partridge Drive, Westwood. Thank you, Chair, Select Board, Town Administration for your dedicated service. I urge you not to raise ambulance rates for Westwood taxpayers. Like the tight town budget you mentioned, every household faces daily financial challenges. Inflation has soared over the past 4 years. Per Westwood CRS page in December 2024, 5% of Westwood residents live in poverty and 24% are 60 and over. Young families are also strained by rising after-school fees and job concerns. New Fire Station 2 could cost taxpayers over $70 million in the next 30 years if approved. Residential property rates have already climbed significantly in recent years. Higher ambulance fees could burden families further during the health emergencies. Please avoid this increase and explore creative solutions by boosting commercial property tax revenues to address the budget. Thank you. Thank you, Ada. There's something here about abatement. Correct me if I'm wrong, Pat. I don't think that has anything to do with this. Our next question comes from Kathy Wallace, 283 Farm Lane, Part 1 of 2. I've been advocating for increased staffing at the Westwood Fire Department for over 2 years, and I will continue to advocate. If the FY25 budget process, only 2 of the 4 requested firefighters, paramedics, positions were funded with an identification that 2 additional firefighters would be included in FY 26. It should have been at the top budget priority when the FY 26 budget process began. I am disheartened that 2 out of 3 select board members are unwilling to make this happen in FY 26, despite that being ample funds in the ambulance receipts. Westwood Fire Department is 25% understaffed according to the 2013 study. Unlike any other municipal department in town, these are essential workers who show up 24/7, 365 days a year, and not able to work remotely or close down in the snowstorm. Our amazing firefighters save lives by not funding these positions. Lives are at risk. And Tish, can you take part 2, please? I'll take
Sure.
forever trying to read this.
It's okay. Kathy Wallace, 283 Farm Lane. Even more disheartening is the lack of leadership coming from our three town administrators. The impetus to increasing ambulance fees did not come from any of our town administrators, even though rates have not been reviewed since 2018. An error was made in not anticipating that the insurance rates would go up substantially on the new $90 million Pine Hill School, and money had to be allocated last week from other sources, including the DPW waste collection budget and health insurance, to cover this shortfall. There is more that I can say and will say, but I will close with asking the select board to use some of the millions of dollars in ambulance receipts or reserve accounts and add to firefighters. I believe you can, but are choosing not to. And then there's a continuation from LIAISON. Would you?
Please, yeah.
Okay.
My eyes have had.
73 Partridge Drive. Abatement might seem straightforward to some, but it's
Point of
often
order,
easy.
Mr. Chair.
Sure.
Is this this is the same comment that I believe you asked town council if this was relevant to our agenda tonight?
Or at least to this item.
Mhm.
I believe it's correct. She's referencing abatement, Rob, and I think the chief addressed that when he talked
Okay.
about having the ability, if you can't pay, to fill out a form and get relief from any bills that you may have.
And
So-
there's one final comment from Ellen Rollins, 86 Green Hill Road. I am pleased to hear the board planning to raise ambulance fees. It will provide important revenue, and as the chief explained, will not negatively impact our residents, and it will alleviate some of the aforementioned tax and expense burdens on the taxpayer. This is a net positive change.
Right, anybody want to comment on any of those?
I will simply, I want to affirm what Ms. Rawlings just said. I think raising the ambulance rates is an important thing to be doing. We should be competitive, as the chief has said. The entity that's going to be paying more to the town are the insurance companies, which should be paying instead of taxpayers. So we are alleviating the burden on taxpayers and putting it rightly where it should be on the insurance companies who are already paying that for services in other towns. With respect to the revenue that will come in, that certainly remains to be seen. Kathy, you and I spoke about this yesterday on the phone. Although projections have not been made, and I understand our vendor will not be making them at least for some period of time until these additional revenues start to come in. That is something that we'll be monitoring carefully.
Yeah, on top of that, that is not a consistent, reliable source of revenue each year. It will fluctuate. There were years where there was, significant increases during COVID when people were getting sick, and there were also, substantial reductions because people weren't on the road, right, Chief? So.
Yeah, absolutely. You can't, I mean, you can look at what you've done in the past, but you can't predict. Who knows? Something could happen. We could get no calls for a month. You just can't-
Which is why we use ambulance receipts for one-time expenses like replacing ambulances, for example. So, with all due respect to Ms. Wallace's question and accusation that we are choosing not to, we are choosing to follow our well-defined financial policies. And while, you know, you can have one issue that is your focus, ours is the entire pie, the entire community. So
And I certainly won't deny the fact that I've been an advocate for adding the 2 additional firefighters sooner than later, and I think it's important, but doesn't appear to be.
we have all agreed that it's important, and we will do so when we have the revenue to do so, the recurring sustainable revenue to do so.
I certainly hope so. I certainly hope so. All right, anybody, was there any other questions there, Tish?
There are, but I think I would defer to town council. I don't know, Pat
So
could take these.
Ms. Zahn from 73 Partridge Drive, the state asked, can you help me understand why my comment is not read out? Well, we surmised your comment about an abatement and we tried to provide you an answer. She then goes on to ask, by which law are you allowed to skip my comments? Well, the open meeting law does not require that every public comment be made or that the board take public comment. We believe we surmised your comment and gave you an answer. And that's the position that I would take at this point in time. The board is free to disagree with me, but that's the status of the law.
Pat, I think you explained that very well. I was sidetracked by the abatement thing, and I immediately start thinking about abatements for taxpayers for their property. So thank you for clarifying that, and I agree.
Yeah, I think the chief made it clear that were people having a difficult time perhaps paying a bill, there's a way that they can get relief fairly simply for that. And
They have difficulty, they're more than welcome to call me. I will walk them through the process.
thank you, Chief.
Mr. Chair, if I may just comment on something, just to inform the board.
Please.
Or remind the board. So on an annual basis, during one of our department head meetings, we have conversations with the department heads regarding different fees that their department or board that they're working with oversees. And we ask them to review those fees and come back with any recommendations. And although the comment that was made, let me just clear for the board, over the last 2 years, we've had 3 different fee schedules that have come before the board. We've had the sealer weights and measures, ambulance rates, as well as the cemetery rate fees. So we do have conversations with our department heads about that. They do within their due diligence to review those fees that are being charged and then make recommendations based off of those reviews. So I just want to make sure the board was aware.
Thank you, Chris. Any further discussion? Pat, did we hit everything?
As best I can tell, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mary Ann, we'd like to make a motion.
I would. I move that this board accept the proposed ambulance rates.
Second that motion.
Roll call. Mary Ann,
Aye.
Rob,
Aye.
I vote aye as well. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Chief.
Chief. Next, we have our annual town meeting article discussion, potential vote to amend, accept, and remove articles. And before we begin, we have several articles, the first one being the fire station. And we have received some correspondence on this.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, just a point of clarification.
Please.
I believe the select board Article 1 that you're referring to is different from the board's action at your March 19th meeting. This is a per bond council, the recommendation for the draft FS1 article is to remove the words designing or the word designing from that article, as the board had previously approved at the special in the town approved at the special town meeting, the design bid funding.
Yes, I see that.
Okay, thank you.
Oh no, chip in anytime. My question is, we received 2 letters of correspondence that I'm aware of in regards to this. Pat, any thoughts on that before we start reading a litany of,
Well,
Let-
we've actually gotten a number of letters about a number of things in this meeting today. And my recommendation, rather than read all those sometimes repetitive letters, is to just post the letters to the town website so that that you identify them, that they've been received in relationship to the articles that they're talking about.
Mary Ann, is that satisfactory to you?
Yes.
Rob?
Yep, that works for me as well.
Me too, Rob, haven't tried to read them. All right then, so correct me if I'm wrong, but we're going to discuss the language change to the zoning bylaw change that we already discussed. Is that correct, Chris?
Yes, Mr. Chair, this would be Select Board 11. This is a zoning bylaw amendment that the board voted on at your March 19th meeting. This would be a zoning bylaw amendment for municipal public safety facilities.
We're
Mr.
discussing.
Chairman, point of order, Dan Bailey, special counsel, is with us. He is the drafter of this particular zoning change.
Okay, and we are discussing this language this evening to confirm the board's direction and intent. And my understanding is that we can individually indicate our support or make a motion
Or
accordingly.
you
Is that
can make a
correct?
motion to support it.
Dan, is there something you want to say in regards to this?
First, I have to unmute myself. No, Mr. Chairman. I mean, we've talked. I've been working with Pat, Chris, Nora on language, and the language that's in front of you, I think, is what Pat and I recommend. It's pretty straightforward and simple, and our view is that the simplest approach, or the simpler the approach, the better. And this would do what the board has asked us to do, which is to have a zoning article that would exempt the proposed FS1 from most provisions of the Westwood zoning bylaw.
Okay, but we're going to drill down to just that language change, correct, Dan?
Yes.
Okay,
Would it be helpful
Mary?
if I show my screen? I have the language that's been.
Yeah, that would be
proposed.
great, Nora. Thanks.
Thank you, Nora. I can't read it.
Me,
Nora, would you be able to make that a little
Larger?
larger for everyone?
Okay,
Please, Nora.
Thank you.
keep going.
that's as big as I can go.
No, I'll tell you a mistake I made doing that later.
The optometrist on High Street is excellent and can provide you with glasses that will improve your vision to 2015, like I have, so I can read it. Because I had too many of these meetings where something would come up and I couldn't read it.
Yeah,
So
all right. Go ahead, Dan.
yeah, what this says is that municipal public safety facilities, and then there's a definition of public safety facilities, will be exempt from all provisions of the zoning bylaw, except for the provisions of section 7.3, which is the environmental impact and design review. FS1 has already gone through that process and has a positive environmental impact and design review. Then there was a need because municipal public safety facilities are not defined in the bylaw. So we have added a definition that says that a municipal public safety facility is a facility owned or operated or under the control of the town of Westwood. And it's inclusive of land, buildings, and or structures. They're used by emergency response service providers, including but not limited to police department, fire department, emergency medical service providers, public safety department, or any other municipal public safety agency. So in a nutshell, what this would do is it would exempt FS1, the Islington Fire Station, should it need to be expanded or reconstructed, the police station, from the operation of zoning bylaw, except for the environmental impact and design review, which the board knows, but I'll mention this for the public, is the process by which the planning board reviews large projects to assure adequate access and similar type provisions. Off the top of my head, I really can't think of anything other than a police station or the 2 fire stations that would fall within the definition of municipal public safety facilities. We've got a, if we had a, for example, if while FS1 is being reconstructed, you have a temporary fire station, that would fall under this, but nothing else sort of jumps to my mind.
Thank you, Dan. Rob, Marianne, should we do this by motion? Accept this language?
It's clearer that way, Joe.
Thank you, Pat. Marianne, would you be so kind?
I think we should perhaps have a bit of a discussion about it first, Joe.
Okay. Yep.
I think it's important that people understand why we are doing this and what this exemption would do. And so I want to spend just a couple minutes talking about that from my perspective in terms of why we are doing this, because I think it's very important. We know that some folks have been following this conversation closely, and we hope that we always have folks who are joining us for the first time. So by way of review, in January of 2024, our town meeting approved design funds for design and bid documents for a new Fire Station 1. The need for the new fire station was first formally recognized in Westwood in 2013 by the Public Safety Facilities Task Force. But it was, and in 2023, a feasibility study was conducted with respect to FS1 that then went to town meeting, special town meeting, January 2024 for those design funds. And since that time, there has been a very significant amount of public process on this following the designs, which were completed, first presented to the select board in August of 2024. And following that, there were meetings with abutters, there were community forums. It went through the public permitting process with the planning board, the EIDR process, environmental impact and design review. And then it went to the Zoning Board of Appeals. So, as you have heard, there has been an appeal taken by, I believe, 22 residents with respect to the ZBA decision. To be clear, there were 7 variances granted by the Zoning Board of Appeals, 5 of which we would need today for the existing station in its existing condition. I think it is important for folks to know that this board has very much wanted to resolve the issue with the abutters, the pending issue. And we have really tried to do that and still hope to resolve those issues. I think it is important, and again, for people who may be tuning into this for the first time, to know that we have had a great deal of discussion with the abutters, and they have given us input, which has changed the project. The planning board alone had, I believe, 27 orders of conditions with respect to this project, which addressed a number of things from construction to screening and so forth, many conditions that were imposed upon this proposed project. In addition, the project itself, as designed, is meant to mitigate some of the existing impacts on the neighborhood. So, for example, there is a great deal of noise, which will be reduced with the new design. There are lighting issues into the neighborhood which currently exist, which will not with the new station. There are issues in terms of a lack of screening, which we have attempted to address and have committed to placing screening, meaning planting new trees, which usually isn't done until the end of a project. But in this case, we've committed to doing that at the beginning of the project so that those trees would actually grow over the course of the project. We have had a great deal of discussion in terms of traffic. And as you've probably heard, initially in the fall, there were some concerns raised about traffic coming from Windsor Road, which does not directly abut the fire station, but it's part of that neighborhood. And we immediately took actions there. We had a "do not block the box" painted on the roadway, and also increase the light cycle at that light to give more time for residents to get out of the neighborhood. Beyond that, although the new design does eliminate the driveway that currently exists at the fire station, we've looked very carefully at how that would impact traffic, and that has been a concern raised by some of the abutters. And what we've gleaned is that the increase in vehicles going through that neighborhood will be incremental at best. It will be the few staff people who approach the fire station from the north and who currently go down that driveway to get into the back parking lot. That's a handful of people. And as well, it will impact apparatus which are coming for repair to the station from FS2, who currently go down the driveway and will now need to go down Windsor and then make a right onto Hillcrest Place. And we have looked at that very carefully and have determined, based on service records, that number of vehicles coming from FS2 to FS1 will be 2.3 vehicles per month. So the other thing I should mention that is very important for the neighborhood is there is currently no drainage whatsoever on the current FS1 property. It was built in 1948. There is no drainage whatsoever, and water is an issue back in that neighborhood. The new FS1 will be built with stormwater management to manage up to a 500-year storm, which will be a very significant improvement to the neighborhood. So with all of that in mind, we are at a point where we may very well not be able to move forward on what is an urgent public safety priority, given the legal impediment. Not only is this critical for public safety of all of us, as well as the people who protect us, the firefighters who are living in a very unhealthy environment in that station. But also, if we are unable to get this done now, it is going to cost taxpayers millions of dollars due to the delay in the escalation costs alone, in addition to the very real threat that we face that something may have to be done imminently if that building fails. Given what I believe to be my primary responsibility as a select board member to protect this town, and given what the town has clearly identified as an urgent public safety need, this is the last resort that we can take to get this done now. And in terms of, that's the why of what we're doing. And in terms of the what, in terms of what we're doing, as was explained by Attorney Bailey, this exemption is only as to our public safety buildings. We have 3 right now: FS1, FS2, and the police station. The police station and FS2 are new buildings. We are not going to need another public safety building for 40 or 50 years in Westwood. This exemption is as to FS1 so that we can get that done. And the exemption does, as Attorney Bailey said, still provide that any public safety building needs to go through the EIDR process. And I just want to explain that a bit in layman's terms. Nora could certainly do it in very technical terms. I'm going to try to do this in a very hopefully manageable way for people to understand that environmental impact and design review, which is done by the planning board, is very extensive and is done to review the impact upon the character of the town, on traffic, etc. It requires a great deal of documentation, including a site plan. They look at construction, parking, water, earth material movement, solar arrays. In addition, the site plan must include information as to landscaping, trees, topography, parking, storm drainage, etc. It is a very extensive process that an application for a property needs to go through. And even with this exemption, a project would need to go through that EIDR review. So I appreciate your indulgence with my lengthy comments, but this is important. This is extremely important to our public safety, and I wanted to explain my thoughts and why I am in support of this article.
Thank you, Marianne. Rob, did you have anything you want to follow up on?
Yeah, please. Thank you, sir. First, let me start with Marianne earlier talked about this was first identified in 2013. We didn't just sit on the knowledge that this needed to be done. Prior select boards prioritized FS2 and the police station as the first 2 public safety buildings that needed to be done at the time. And fortunately, thanks to all of the new tax revenue that was generated out of University Station, we were able to build those 2 projects within the confines of Prop 2.5. We then needed to turn our attention as a community to some of the needs at the schools. The fire department understood they had this new station down at FS2, and we did what we could to shore up the station in its condition by putting the lally columns and I-beams that you see holding up the floor in many of the pictures that you've seen. So that was a dozen years ago. The department has been waiting patiently to have this addressed now that we have gotten through the Pine Hill construction. Let me remind you, they don't wait patiently to enter your home during an emergency, but they have been waiting very patiently to get this done. To the idea that it's going to cost us millions, it will. Just the compound effect of inflation in a 2 to 3 year court case will add roughly $6 million to the cost of the project alone, let alone, the legal fees on top of that. But let's also address an elephant in the room. Marianne said if that building should fail. Well, in having conversations with some of the members of the department, they know they could pick up the phone tomorrow and likely call OSHA, and we would have a problem on our hands right away. In which case we would need to build a temporary solution, much like we were going to do during the construction. So there is an extension of that cost that could get you easily up over $10 million. And that's without any of the tariffs affecting building materials at this point in time. So, as we look at this, we don't take this consideration lightly, but we are doing this because of the urgent need that is today for the fire department so that they can have an appropriate building to operate out of and make sure that all 16,000 residents here in town are safe. It's also, we as a select board are thinking about the taxpayers as well, all 16,000 residents with that. Because if that were to cost us the extra $10-15 million by an extended court case, guess what you get for that $10 to $15 million? Nothing. So, when we look at that, we say our responsibility is to the 16,000 of you. Okay? The 23 or 22 who have, brought this action against the Zoning Board of Appeals, quite frankly, they bought their homes knowing there was an aging fire station there. The average homeowner that, is in a complaint on this has owned their home for 14 years. And in that 14 years, they've seen an average appreciated home value go up by something like $750,000. So I'm not really going to cry a river for them. I'm worried about our fire department. I want to get them the building that they need, and we need to get this done now. That's why we're taking the action that we're taking.
Thank you, Rob. I just want to dovetail on one thing that you said, Rob, and Chief Lund, if you can help me out with this, just so the public knows that if that apparatus floor should fail with the apparatus on it, what is the wait time to get a replacement engine or ladder company?
Close to 3 years.
Thank you, Chief. Any other comments from the panelists? Rob, Mary Ann, well done. Tish, can you help me with the comments here? I'm sorry, Q&A.
Sure. First is from Richard Strauss, 258 Canton Street. Will DPW come under this change?
I think that's been answered a couple times, Mr. Chairman, if I may. The DPW will not come under this, and it's not our intent to have them come in under this. Our intent is to free up the FS1 project.
Thank you, sir.
Then Mr. Strauss adds another comment. I would like to see police and fire wording included in the zoning change. It makes it clear and no debate.
Thank you for your comment. Anything else there, Tish?
There's one more from Adazan, 73 Partridge Drive. I'm impressed by the select board's consistent prioritization of firefighters and public safety. However, it's disheartening to see our dedicated firefighters working under such poor conditions. I'd like to know who's responsible for the situation, what lessons have you learned from it, and what steps will you take to prevent similar issues in the future?
Oh, I can answer that. I think my colleagues handled those questions very well. And I don't think we need to have a follow-up to that. Anything else from Rob or Mary Ann or the panelists?
Mr. Chair, I see a couple of hands, three hands raised in the attendee list.
Thanks, Rob.
And I believe Attorney Bailey had his hand up a moment ago.
Let's let Dan go first.
That was inadvertent. I clicked the wrong button. So I took it down as soon as I put it up.
Okay, thanks, Dan. Who do you see in the queue there, Rob?
I believe I see Nancy Hyde, Kathy Wallace, and Phil Shapiro each with their hands up.
Let's take them in that order.
Nancy, right now, Nancy Hyde.
Yes,
Please.
hi, I'm here. Good evening. Am I on?
Good evening. We can hear you.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Nancy Hyde, 15 Martingale Lane, and a member of the fire station working group as a representative from the Permanent Building Committee. And I just want to say that the proposed zoning change that you're considering tonight to exempt the public safety, specifically police and fire, is absolutely necessary. You all have given a thorough review, and as have the Planning Board, the Conservation Commission, and the ZBA. So there's nothing new here. This isn't a move that in the zoning change would eliminate all that work that they've done that stands. And this zoning proposal with the exemption is a final step that I think threads the needle for this very essential project. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. Rob, looks like Phil Shapiro.
I believe Kathy Wallace is next in line, and then Phil.
Okay, Kathy.
Ron? Yes, here's Miss Wallace.
Hi,
Please.
Kathy Wallace, 283 Farm Lane. Mary Ann, thank you for that excellent explanation. I supported this idea when I heard it discussed at the March 19th Select Board meeting, and I understand it even better right now. Hearing about the EIDR being still required, that was not something that I understood on Wednesday, and that gives me a great deal of comfort, knowing that our extraordinary planning board would be involved actively in any future projects. And as indicated, there probably won't be any more beyond this one for 40 years. The planning board has done a terrific job, as you said, placing 27 conditions on this to actually improve some of the conditions for the neighborhood, as well as alleviate some of the things due to the larger building. I have participated in the entire public process because, as people might notice, I have a great affinity for our firefighters in town. I think they are terrific people and there when we all need them. I've heard recent discussions and, that the building's too big and that's why we need these variances. As participating in the entire process, there is nothing extra in this building. In fact, things were removed from the building. I wish we could even do more for the firefighters, but people reference, question what a day room is, or that there might be a little workout area. Well, think about the stress that these people endure during their jobs. They need to have a place where they come back to and that, they can downshift before the next call comes in. And sometimes there's not a lot of time between those calls. So we need to protect the mental and physical well-being of our firefighters. And that building does just this. It's unfortunate that it's come to this, that, 22 residents are holding up a project that's vital to 16,000 other people. And I'm sure I'm running out of time, but the last thing I'd like to say is it's a $40 million project. It's going to be competitively bid. I have looked at other towns who have similar costs for their fire stations, and we've already spent, I think, close to $5 million on the design and review. So to stop now would be a travesty for the town and our firefighters. Thank you.
Thank you, Kath.
Got Phil Shapiro next, Mr. Chair.
Thanks, Rob.
And then you have Paula McLaughlin queued up behind Phil.
Excellent.
I believe Phil might have put his hand down. Let me see. I don't see it raised
I
any
don't see it
longer.
now. No.
Oh, no, he's that. Hold on. I just arm.
He may have put it down when he heard I was acknowledging it.
Here's Phil.
Okay, very good. Thank you all. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to step
Mr.
back.
Shapiro, could you give us your address, please, sir?
Oh, 159 Mill Street. I think this was a very good discussion. I think the board has outlined, a plan B, which at this point is necessary. And I just wanted, as a former select board member, I wanted to sort of put a little perspective on this. Some things, many things that the select board does are nice to do. It's, there are a lot of things that are interesting and fun and make the town a little better, and where people can go home at night and say, I've moved the ball forward a little bit. Other things are critical responsibilities. And if you think about them too much, sometimes, maybe you don't go home and sleep that well. And this is one of them. Public safety is at the heart of what the select board and the town's government is responsible for. And the fact that we have sort of collectively over the last 15 or 20 years been living with a less than ideal situation, we probably, unfortunately, we only have the ability to do one big project at a time, as Rob was saying. This is something that should have been done 20 years ago. This, the challenges and the situation and the suboptimal situation existed 20 years ago, but we didn't, we had a queue. This is where this came out in the queue. And to not go forward with this, quite honestly, this is in everybody's backyard. Westwood's a small town. And the fact that 15,900 backyards are going to be improved because of the capabilities we're going to be giving our firefighters is really something we've all got to, we've got to think about. That yes, it might be slightly inconvenient during construction for a few neighbors. We've all had that wherever we live. That happens once in a while. I think that the fire department has been a good neighbor. It will continue to be a good neighbor. The construction company will be given instructions so that they're a good neighbor during construction. And this is something we're doing for 16,000 folks. And unfortunately, in New England, we have a trouble with not in my backyard. And I'd like to think of this project as being in all of our backyards and being something we're responsible for in order to protect public safety. And I appreciate your efforts in doing this, and I wholeheartedly support them.
Thank you, Phil. Right on time. It looks like Paula next. Rob, is that right?
That is right, Mr. Chair.
Wait a minute. Phil, were you done?
I think he was trying to figure out how to get the mic off and get off screen.
We'll
So
turn them off.
Well
All right,
said.
so now we have Paul McLaughlin. Hold on. Oh. No, okay. We have Paula.
Hi. Paula McLaughlin, 39 Hawthorne Street in Westwood. I come from a long line of public servants. I'm just going to put that out there. I'm a little embarrassed that it's taking us this long to do something about the fire station. I've spoken about this at meetings, but I can't believe that I'm speaking about it again because nothing's been done. I commend our select board for what seems to me like bending over backwards to help a neighborhood that's a little bit, unhappy with this project. And I don't need to repeat what everyone said. This is really something for the entire town. But when I want you to understand that we're asking the firefighters to do an incredibly tough job, and we're giving them the worst conditions to live in, to work in. And I actually, live is probably right because they're spending so much time there. If any people in of those 22 worked under the conditions that these firefighters worked under, you'd probably quit your job or be complaining constantly. But it doesn't matter because it's not your problem. But for some reason, you're offended by the size of the building and a little construction and 7 more cars coming into your parking lot. And I think for the good of the town, we need to just move this forward. Marianne, you were eloquent in your explanation. I appreciate that. I just don't. I'm getting heated, and I have always been the person that's working for the good of the entire town. I've stood up at meetings and sometimes don't agree with my neighbors if something is in our backyard and they don't like it. I will stand up and say, what's for the common good? People need to think about that. This isn't just about your beautiful, quaint little neighborhood. By the way, hadn't been there, but now I'm curious and I'm going to go down and check it out a little more. It's a beautiful neighborhood back there. It doesn't, I can't imagine how you're so offended by this project. I think I speak for probably 15,000 other residents when I say, just please let this go. For the firefighters in our community, let's pass this and show them that we actually care about their safety and their working conditions, because right now what we're saying is collectively we're going to let a few people tell the firefighters that we don't care about them, and that's not true. So I'm sorry, I'm a little passionate about it, but it's, I watched my grandfather die from cancer after giving his life as a firefighter. So if I'm a little heated about it, it's personal to me, and it should be personal to everyone. And I'll end with this. When my mother died last year, it was the Westwood Fire Department that came and took care of her the day before she died. And because it was the same crew who undoubtedly slept over the night before and came to see the next day, they could tell the difference in her condition and got her to the hospital, just in time so that she could die peacefully in a hospital. These firefighters were kind, they were considerate, and they're dealing with people at their worst times, when they've had a car accident, when somebody's dying, when they're having a heart attack. They don't have an easy job. I challenge the 22 people that are against this project to walk in their shoes for one day and tell me they're not worth it. That's all I
Paula, yeah, Paula, thank you so much. Well said. Well said. Thank you. All right, and I think
Chair, I
it's,
believe I see a John Cummings with his hand up, and I believe there was another question or two in the Q&A.
okay. Tish, can we admit John, please?
John Cummings.
Yeah.
Good evening, everyone.
Hi, John.
Okay, this is John Cummings, 4 Chickadee Lane. I'm also on the SF1 working group because I'm on the permanent building committee. And I want to say that everything you guys have said is 100% spot on. And we keep referring to the 16,000 people in the town. And I got to tell you, these firefighters are so amazing. They will be in the squalor that they're in now, and they will still save everybody in that town. That building is so undersized because it was redone in 1975 that in a snowstorm, when they get called in, they're sleeping in the chairs in the kitchen. We visited 3 different stations. Every single one of them had a day room where they could relax and unwind after a particular bad call. They had a workout room so they could work off any stress. There's actually no decontamination area in the fire station that's currently in place. That is incredibly crazy that this was allowed to go on for so long. This station really needs to be about the firefighters and us keeping them safe. The size of the building is literally because of the apparatus size. All those machines will be coming out the front. Because of the square, we're able to put on the dorms that will facilitate further growth in the department, which that would be the growth, is increasing more personnel. We're able to facilitate any of the training that these firefighters go through constantly. This is an incredibly important project that needed to get done, and I'm glad you guys are taking the steps to put it to the voters in May. And thank you all very much for all of your efforts. Cheers.
Thank you, John. The questions in the Q&A, right, Rob?
Would you like me to read them?
Oh, gladly.
This is another comment from Ada Zong, 73 Partridge Drive. She writes, the planning board held 4 public hearings to discuss 7 zoning bylaw amendment articles. Gathering resident input for over a total of 10 hours. Despite this effort, only a small group of residents attended and provided public comments. For context, the 2024 state election saw 10,206 Westwood voters participate, indicating a highly engaged population. I'd like to ask, how many public hearings have the select board hosted for this zoning bylaw amendment relative to municipal public safety facilities, and what was the total duration? More importantly, how do you justify that these hearings adequately reflect the needs of the Westwood voters, and how will you this process ensure your decisions align with the broader community's interests?
May I answer that?
Please.
Thank you, Joe. I believe, Ada, from the email I received from you, that you are aware that this article was first introduced last week. So I believe you are aware of that. So this is the second hearing that we are having on this article. And there's a reason for that. Because as we have discussed, we have made many attempts to try to resolve this matter, the legal matter, in other ways. And unfortunately, we have been unable to do that. And at this point, in terms of the question of justifying the actions we're taking, our duty is to public safety of the 16,246 people in this town. And town meeting has already voted to allocate $3.5 million to the design of a fire station because it is urgently necessary for public safety in this town. And yes, so as to protect the firefighters who protect us. So that is the justification for what we're doing. We did not do it lightly, and we did not do it initially. As was said, this is the plan B. This is how we can get this done. And we also have a duty to be fiscally responsible and to be stewards of taxpayer dollars. And as has been discussed, if we do not get this done now, this station has to be replaced. It has to. And if we don't get it done now, we are going to have to spend millions more as a community due to the delay, and not to mention the legal costs that are also involved that we are all going to have to pay for. So yes, that is the justification for doing what we're doing now.
And further to that, as you stated earlier, we tried to resolve this through mediation, and we have yet to be successful in that regard. So this is the first time that we're talking about this, other than when we spoke about it Wednesday morning. And we are here to get public input, but ultimately, the ultimate public hearing will be on the floor of town meeting. We will put this before the FinCom as well. The planning board will have an opportunity to weigh in on this in all likelihood as well. So from that perspective, we are doing what we feel is necessary, that is in the best interest of the 16,000 residents, from both a public safety standpoint, a fiscal responsibility standpoint, and most importantly, to protect the men and women of the WFD.
Thank you,
Ms.
Rob.
Zong goes on to second part of the question. Joe, I'm sorry, Joe, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
I'll wait till after this question. Go ahead, Rob.
Very
Thank you.
good. Ms. Zong goes on to say, why fire station 2 dorms and 3 bays exceed its 3 firefighter capacity and single active engine, and how this aligns with fire station 1 needs. That's part 1 of her question. Part 2 is why the proposed fire station 1 requires 10 dorms for 7 firefighters, 5 offices for 4 administrative staff, considering fire station 2's capacity. The purpose of the 11,918 square foot second floor, including unspecified rooms, and its role in joint operations. And then how a multi-million-dollar maintenance bay is cost effective when FY 2024's repairs were 16,646, especially with 2 stations sharing resources. I'd be happy to answer some of that, but I will defer, Mr. Chair, to you if you would like to begin.
I'm having trouble understanding.
Well, let me see if I can interpret the question. And I believe part one, where it says why Fire Station 2, 5 dorms and 3 bays exceed its 3 firefighter capacity. And we'll talk about this as well in conjunction with the 10 dorms for 7 firefighters. When we have potential public safety emergencies, snowstorms, hurricanes, things of that nature, Chief, do you issue a recall and bring more than the typical staff in so that people are pre-positioned to be able to respond?
Absolutely. We'll add more in both stations. That way, if for some reason there's only two roads that connect both sides of town. So if the town got split in half, we'd be able to respond to either side. That's why we split it in half.
Very good. The third part of her question has to do with the second floor. The size of the second floor is driven by, as we have said on countless public meetings, public information sessions, is driven by the apparatus bay that is on the main floor exiting to High Street. So there's got to be a second floor on top of that apparatus floor that is being put to maximal use with meeting space. I've seen a question about why 50. Chief, I believe there are 48 firefighters on the staff, are there not? So if you need to have a training, you need to have everybody in?
46, but yes, correct.
Very good.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and the multi-million-dollar maintenance bay, that is a necessity for keeping our costs for repairs down and keeping our operational readiness up so that we can repair vehicles on site rapidly, return them to service, and do so at a much lower cost than if we had to ship them out, costing a lot more money and, more importantly, operational readiness.
Correct.
Thank you, Rob. I just want to dovetail onto that this isn't something, and Phil alluded to that, that's brand new out the chute. This goes back several select boards. In addition to that, as far as the specific requirements as to the dorms and those sorts of things, those numbers were based on input from the chief and his deputies and the firefighters, as well as the town paid for 3 objective studies, and they came up with similar recommendations for staffing. This wasn't pulled out of thin air. We had studies to support this. I think there's
Mr.
one
Chair,
more.
I do believe I see one more hand raised in the attendees list. I would recognize Michael Walsh.
Thanks, Rob. You're on, Mike.
Sorry, but thank you. I'm sorry about that.
Mike, just your address, please.
Sure, 9 Westwood Terrace,
Thank you.
and that is in Westwood, Mass. So this has been on our radar for a long time. I've been on the select board 9 years. This was on our radar from day one. But we have to prioritize in town, and so we step back to let the new school be built. And so this is way overdue. And I know people say, just like with the elementary school and with the fire station 2, this is way too big. This is way too much for our town. But we're planning for the future. We're not planning for just today to replace it. And so part of the things that all the regulations tell us, it has to be much bigger than most people would like it to be, and that we want it to be. But you get in ADA compliance, you get into all of these other issues, it becomes much more of a bigger building than you want it to be. But that is not all because of us. We have used great designers in town who know the future, who predict what will happen. Right now, we're at 16,000. When I first came on the select board, we were at 13,000. And that was only 9 years ago. Well, now it's 11 years. So 11 years ago, we were 13, now we're 16,000. So when you start to add that up, you have to plan for the future. In fact, the building is probably bigger than we need right now, but it's for the next part of town, and they will pay those taxes as well. And everyone is contributing to make sure that this stays in, so that we don't need another building in 25 years, that we need another building in 50 years. And I know that's hard for people to digest, but that's what we really need going forward. And people have to stop thinking about right now and think about what's happening in the future. This town is going to continue to grow. And I'm glad that you guys are stepping up to take these steps to make sure that our town will stay safe. And whatever way we need to do it, we need to do it to make sure every single resident is safe in town. So thank you. I appreciate the opportunity.
Thanks, Mike. All right, Rob, have we cleared the deck?
Almost. I see one more question in the Q&A from Mary Jane Briska, 1450 High Street. Can the exemption be made temporary, meaning it expires in 10 years, or include named public safety as either police or fire station in the exemption?
I don't have an answer on that, and I'm not sure we can get an answer this evening.
I would be reluctant to do so. For example, if we needed another public safety building, maybe down in University Ave, if there was expansion down there that somehow facilitated, whether that be a police substation or a fire substation or something along those lines, I would be loath to put any type of time frame on that, and I would keep it as it is currently written. That's my recommendation.
Yeah, I agree, Rob, on the time thing. I was thinking about the specifics as far as just police fire, but that's something I'll leave up to the attorneys. All right, Mary Ann, anything else you'd like to say? You said so very eloquently.
Thanks, Joe. It looks like we've got a couple more comments
Oh, okay.
in the Q&A. I'm
So-
happy to read them, Joe. Oh.
Yeah,
Look-
I'll keep rolling with it, Mary Ann, if you're okay.
You got it, Rob.
Ms. Zahn continues, Select Board Member Robert Gotti, thank you for addressing my question. Could you please specify how much additional repair cost the town might face without a maintenance bay? Are we looking at an increase of $1,000, $2,000 or more? You're asking how long is a piece of string. I can't tell you how many repairs would be necessary on site versus how much we would need to send out. I don't know, Chief, if you have any further insight to that, but I don't believe there's any, objective data to be able to rely on to answer that question with any guarantee.
Oh, but it's a 50-year building. I'm sure that will outspend the cost of building it if we didn't build it.
Yep.
But
If I could
but
interject on
Steve,
that.
on the repairs, can you just tell the public what you pay on an hourly rate for the system you have now and what it would be for an outside vendor?
So we have a part-time mechanic that's making $40 an hour, or we could send it to one of the vendors for $200 an hour. Or if they came out and repaired it at our station, it would be $300 an hour. So,
Thank you, Chief.
Yeah.
Mary Ann, back to you.
Yeah, just to add one thing. I think it's really important when we talk about the maintenance bay that we keep in mind, and Rob, I think you said this, that it's not just the cost, it's the operation readiness, and it's the fact that when we have had to send vehicles out for repairs, it has sometimes, and Chief, correct me if I'm wrong, taken weeks, if not months. I think there was one instance where you were having an apparatus work done and the repair yard went on strike and you couldn't get the apparatus back for a significant period of time.
yeah,
Is
6
that right,
months.
Chief?
6 months we lost the truck for.
So one important piece of apparatus out of service for 6 months. So that is a really important part of this. It's not just what we're paying, it's actually having access to our important safety apparatus.
Thank you, Mary Ann. All right, Rob, let's give this another look over.
Last one is just a comment from Michael Walsh. Town meeting would always have the opportunity to change. So.
I think what Mike's saying, I looked at today, you're right, Mary Ann, Rob, about 2 meetings on this so far, but we have the public also has opportunity to comment at FinCom, April Select Board meeting, Planning Board meeting, and then annual town meeting. So there's plenty of opportunity to comment on this.
Mr. Chair, there was another question from Ms. Zong, and I believe she's probably had her fill of her 3 minutes of questions at this point in time. So this is getting into a debate and not a Q&A.
I concur.
Any issue with that, town council?
Rob, why don't we just play it
I-
safe, read the last
I
one and
don't
that.
have an issue with your position on this. She's had many opportunities. And it, like you said, it's not really a debate, it's a public process.
This is a,
Mr. Chair.
this is a public meeting, not a public hearing either.
Mr. Chair, could I just say that Ms. Song has emailed me all of these questions, and I let her know today that I would get all of these answers back to her this week.
Thank you very much, Molly.
Your call, Mr. Chair. You want it read or not?
Read it and we're done with it.
Very good. Can you be specific? Reasons for repair delays. What specific factors are causing delays listed in repair schedule? She's got screenshots that she's including. Are they due to inefficiency in the repair process? Yeah, I think if Molly is going to answer all of these to you, then we're not going to get into that and delay these proceedings any further. This is not a public hearing, it is a public meeting.
Thank you, Rob. All right, any other discussion? Oh. No, thank you very much was our last comment. All right. Mary Ann, are you interested in making a motion at this time?
I am, Joe, thank you. I move that this board adopt the language for Select Board Article number 11, zoning bylaw amendments relative to municipal public safety facilities as drafted.
I second that motion.
Roll call. Mary Ann,
Aye.
Rob,
Aye.
I vote aye as well, and I also want to publicly acknowledge Molly for her input on that discussion. Thank you, Molly. Next, we move to bylaw amendments for the flood area overlay district. Is that correct, Chris?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
And this is Select Board Article number 12, relative to Flood Area Overlay District, FAOD.
And
No,
Mr.
I
Chair, if I may, just to remind the viewers, the board did discuss this at your March 19th meeting and voted to use a miscellaneous article. And so now that would be, that miscellaneous article is turned into Article Select Board 12. And just discussing the language, further discussing the language this evening.
Thank you, Chris. Nora, I see you have this up on the screen. Did you want to comment at all on it?
Sure. So this one is a proposed new article that was not discussed until your meeting on Wednesday. It requires changes to the flood area overlay district section of the bylaw, that's section 9.2. These changes are necessary and required by FEMA to bring Westwood's flood area overlay district requirements into compliance with the state model bylaw for flood control districts. There are a number of changes. None of them significantly change the way the process is implemented for review of properties in the flood area overlay district. It really doesn't change the process much, but it changes some definitions. It changes the language of the bylaw itself. We don't have a whole lot of discretion here. These are very specific requirements that are in the state model bylaw, and we are required to adopt a bylaw that matches that state model. And if we don't do that, then we've been told that Westwood will be removed from the National Flood Insurance Program. So I'm happy to go quickly through the bylaw changes to give you a taste for what they are. To begin with, the first section is the purpose. We had a very simple purpose defined in our bylaw previously. That's the part that's struck out in red. And the state model bylaw requires us to have very specific descriptions of what that purpose is. Doesn't change it significantly. It just expands upon the purpose that was given. Essentially, it's still to make sure that everyone is safe and that properties don't experience undue flood damage. Definitions, similar section. We had previously gone by just definitions that were elsewhere in the bylaw. For this one section, the state is requiring us to use their specific definitions, and we've put them into section 9.2 rather than rely on the section 2 definitions in the zoning bylaw, so that these definitions reflect flood area overlay districts only, and it doesn't change the meaning of the rest of our bylaw. This will all be posted on the planning board webpage, so if anyone wants to read through these definitions and see what the changes are, they can do that at their leisure, and it'll be discussed in detail at the planning board public hearing on April 15th. Here's another section in the bylaw where we refer to it as just, we called out the location of the flood area overlay district. And the state model uses very specific language. Instead of calling it location, they have a section entitled Use of FEMA Maps and Supporting Studies. And so we have to refer to it the same way, show the areas of the flood maps and what they mean, and then update the flood map numbers. Every time the flood maps, they're called firm maps, the Norfolk County flood insurance rate maps, every time those are updated, which is about every 12 years or so, they change the suffix. It was most recently E, at one point it was A, and now it is F. So that's another change here, just changing the suffix on all of those different maps and changing their date of effectiveness. The previous version was effective as of July 17, 2012. This new version will be effective as of July 8th, 2025. Another change, they require us to designate a specific town employee as the floodplain administrator. And we have chosen in this draft of the bylaw to designate our building commissioner as the official floodplain administrator for the town. He reviews all building applications and has to apply this section of the law anyhow, so we are naming him as the administrator. There's a section that says permits are required for all development within the flood area overlay district. That's just to confirm that that's the case. Assure all necessary permits are obtained. Seems duplicative, saying permits are required, and assure they're obtained, but that's what the state is requiring us to do. Other sections of our bylaw simply get renumbered. Here's a section where we add Norfolk County firm as opposed to just saying the firm flood insurance rate maps. And then we change the language slightly to meet the FEMA model flood language that the state has. Here's a section we've removed about new construction in the flood zones. That's duplicative of a previous section that they've asked us to add that talks about permitting required for all new construction. This is a new section that we're asked to add about unnumbered A zones. So this is in the case where a map doesn't show a specific number to a zone, how you would treat that. That's for areas that might come into play in between the current edition of the maps and the next edition of the maps. There's also language that specifically calls out subdivision proposals and how subdivision proposals of flood district properties will be addressed. We have language similar to this in our subdivision regulations. There's a specific requirement now that we address recreational vehicles in flood zones, saying exactly how they have to be placed on a site, elevated and anchored in accordance with zone regulations. There's another section about notification of a water course alteration, essentially moving the course of a river or stream. We had a section that discussed that before. It was brief, and now the FEMA is requiring us to have very specific requirements in place, so we've added those. There's a requirement now to submit new technical data so that if the town, through a development, receives information that contours on a property change, for instance, or the velocity of a stream increases, we provide that data to the state and federal administrators as well. There's a section that talks about variances to the building code for flood standards, and essentially says that any variances are now taken up to the Massachusetts State Building Code Board of Appeals. Variances to local zoning bylaws related to community compliance with the flood insurance program. There's some language they've asked us to add on that. And then two clauses that are in the model bylaw that we did not have before. One is the abrogation and greater restriction clause that says the floodplain management regulations found in section 9.2 take precedence over any less restrictive conflicting local laws, ordinances, or codes. And the other is a disclaimer of liability saying the degree of flood protection required by this bylaw is considered reasonable but does not imply total flood protection, so that no one reads our bylaw to say that if they develop their land, it will not flood. So those are all the required changes that the state and FEMA are requiring us to make in order to remain within the federal flood insurance program.
Thank you, Nora. Mary Ann, do you have any questions or comments?
Just to thank Nora, and if it wasn't said, just to let folks know that this will be also going before the planning board for a public hearing on April 15th.
Thank you. Rob, any comments?
Just want to echo Mary Ann's thanks to Nora's diligence and attention to detail.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Please.
So this is very important for people who live in a floodplain in Westwood. Their mortgages mortgages require that they have flood insurance. And if we don't pass this, we're at risk, my understanding, to lose those residents' ability to get flood insurance. So this is vital to those people.
Thank you, Pat. And I'll just follow up what you said, Rob, is that Nora did this on a very, very tight window, which kudos for a job well done. Rob, I don't see any hands. I don't see any of the participants raising their hands. I think
Your eyes are not failing you, Mr. Chair. That is true.
Mary, would you like to make a motion on SB 13?
I would.
SB
Thank
12.
you. It's 12, you're right. I move
Yep.
that
Sorry, 12.
I move that this board accept the language as proposed for Select Board Article number 12, zoning bylaw amendments relative to flood area overlay district.
I second that motion.
Roll call, Mary Ann?
Aye.
Rob?
Aye.
I vote aye as well. Motion carries. Next, we have Article Select Board 13, zoning bylaw amendments relative to the Administrative Research Office, ARO district, and/or assisted living residence, nursing homes, or convalescent homes. We will need a motion on this. I think, Nora, are you presenting on this?
I am. So let me, before I show you my screen, I wanted just to give you a little explanation of how this came about. So back in the late fall, early winter, the town began receiving some calls from people who were interested in redeveloping a property within the ARO, Administrative Research Office District, specifically the property at 131 East Street. The property is not publicly offered for sale, yet 3 separate entities have all asked questions about developing this property, and they were all interested in developing it for various residential uses, specifically age-restricted residential uses, assisted living facility, nursing home uses of that nature, or some combination of those. And because the property is it's commercially zoned, or it's zoned as an administrative research office development, which allows several commercial uses as well as those residential uses we specified: residential retirement community, assisted living facility, and nursing home. Because it's commercially developed right now, the property tax value is counted within our commercial tax value for the town, and the property is assessed and charged a tax bill at the commercial rate. If this property was redeveloped for one of the residential uses that people seem interested in developing it for, that would have an effect on the town's, on the split tax rate. As many of you know, as everyone on the select board certainly knows, the town has a split tax rate, and we charge commercial value properties a different rate than we charge residential value properties. And the residential taxpayers benefit from that because a greater portion of the taxes are paid by the commercial property owners than you would expect, knowing that we only have 6% of the town zoned for commercial. They pay at a higher rate. We have seen over the years changes in the percentage of commercial value as a percentage of overall value of the town property. There was a time back in the early 1990s where the town's commercial property value was about 20% of the overall town value. Over the years, it fell. I think at the lowest, it was brushing up against 10%. We got it back up with University Station to about, I think 13, 14%, and we were rising and hoping to get higher than that. But one of the things that affected that, in addition to lack of commercially zoned land to develop, we saw dramatic increases in the value of residential properties, none more so than over the past 3 or 4 years, especially over the last 2 years. And as the value of residential properties increases, the relative value of the commercial properties as a percentage of our overall property value decreases. For that reason, we are constantly in a running in place, essentially, trying to stay up on top of that and trying to keep a high enough commercial property value to make the split tax rate something that is still achievable. And every year, the select board have a discussion with the tax assessors about whether or not the split rate is being recommended to continue. So far, it has continued, but we're getting very close to that edge where we could eventually lose it. And if we were to lose the split tax rate, all residential property owners would see an immediate substantial increase in their real estate tax bills to make up for that difference that the commercial properties carry because of the higher commercial tax rate. So for that reason, we are forever trying to maintain our commercial properties as commercial properties. And the interest that was expressed by these 3 different entities about this one property for residential development is concerning. Whether or not the property is actually available for redevelopment or not, whether any property within the ARO is available for redevelopment. I was concerned that the town should put itself in the best position by having the best commercial uses available to entice a property owner, a future property owner, to develop the property for commercial purposes and not to put it into a residential use. Looking at the ARO district, the one use that I saw as what I considered a glaring omission was hotel or motel. It's allowed in all of the larger commercial zones. It's allowed in highway business. It's allowed in industrial, I believe in industrial office as well, but it's not allowed in ARO. And I think that is a use that would be appropriate in the ARO. So I had recommended to the planning board that they consider this. We posted an article, we advertised it, and the planning board took it up in its first public hearing on zoning amendment bylaw warrant articles. And they considered adding hotel motel to the list of allowed uses for the ARO district. They looked at a couple of other options as well, but that was an area that they settled on. In the course of the hearing, though, they decided that it was important not just to have this incentive by adding a hotel as a possible commercial use, but they believe that a disincentive by limiting some of the residential uses would also be appropriate. The specific concern was about assisted living facilities and nursing home or convalescent homes. Right now, the way those are in the bylaw, there is no restriction on the density and there is no minimum lot size. And what that means is that either of those uses could be proposed taking only into consideration the setback requirements, the height requirement, and the floor area requirement to limit the size of a building that could go there. As a result, at least one of the proposals, which I have to say these proposals are concept level, discussion level, no applications have been filed, but at least one of them is looking at a possibility of 250 to 300 units of housing at that location. And I think you can understand that that would significantly change the value of the property, the amount of commercial value we know is set today at roughly $8.6 million. That's the commercial value of the property as it sits with an office building that's been vacant for 5 years or so. If that was to turned over to a residential use, depending on how the residential use was laid out and what it amounted to, we'd have to see what the residential property value would be. But it could range anywhere from the value that a 250 to 300 unit assisted living nursing home facility would have to something that a 75 unit single family home development would have. And those are significantly higher than $8.6 million. And it would be taking the $8.6 million off of the commercial side of our tax rolls and adding, I hesitate to throw out a value, but maybe $75 million to our residential side. So a significant change. So for that reason, the planning board was interested, and for the implications of what would go along with that and what the traffic concerns might be with such a large facility, the planning board was interested in pursuing an article that added hotel and also restricted the property to put density and size restrictions on assisted living and nursing home. They discussed that some more. When they met for their last hearing last Tuesday, I let them know that because the original advertisement for their public hearing on this one warrant article was specifically listed and advertised for changes to the commercial uses within the principal use table, they were unable to consider changes to residential uses, to change the assisted living facilities or nursing home requirements. They were unable to do that unless they re-advertised the article. We gave them the options. The planning board discussed this at its meeting last week, that they could either limit their article to just adding hotel, come back to a new zoning advertisement and ask the FinCom to hold on the discussion of this article until later, or they could eliminate the article and try again at the next town meeting. The planning board chose that third option and decided to eliminate it. They did not feel comfortable just going forward with changes to the hotel, and they did not feel comfortable taking this and re-advertising it and having a whole new hearing, mainly due to the how close it is getting to town meeting. So they decided to take a step back and try this again at the next town meeting. So then after our meeting on Wednesday, I received a request to consider, to allow the select board to consider whether they would want to have this taken up as one of the select board articles. And to do that, since I was already posting a legal notice for the public safety facility zoning article and the flood area overlay district zoning article, I added this option to that same hearing notice. That had to go out on Friday. So it's gone to the paper and it will run on Thursday. And the hearing notice allows you to consider a very broad article for you to discuss tonight, how broad you want that article to be. So I posted the advertisement so that it would allow you to consider a hotel being added to the property or any other commercial use being added to the property, changes to the residential uses that are currently in there, including the changes to assisted living and nursing home facility, as well as the potential for changing the dimensional or general requirements related to the ARO district, such as adding a buffer zone that's not there now. That's something that the planning board indicated that they might want to take up in the future. Because of how close we are getting to town meeting, I'd like to show you the three options and have you discuss them to see which way you want to go with this.
Before
and
you
then
do,
I will-
Nora, may I make just a couple of comments? I watched that entire planning board meeting the other night, and I also think you did an excellent job of explaining a few other things. So I believe I heard you say, and you can feel free to correct me if I'm wrong here, that if one of those potential residential developers was to make a compelling enough offer that it was something that Meditech would want to consider, we would then be blocked from having any changes to zoning going forward.
Right, so the property owner or prospective property owner with the consent of the current property owner could file a preliminary subdivision plan to freeze the zoning, which would mean if you had a future town meeting where you consider changing the zoning, it would not apply to that property for a period of years. That would be an option.
Okay. Now, we talked about our split tax rate. I'm going to keep math simple for people. A couple years ago, our commercial tax value as a percent of the overall town value was roughly 15%, might have been a little bit lower than 15%, which when we apply the tax shift factor that we as a select board vote every year when it's recommended by the Board of Assessors, that means the 15% of commercial property pays roughly 25.5% of the town tax bill. That is direct relief to residents. When we had property values go up 3 times faster on the residential side than the commercial side, that meant that the percentage of commercial as a slice of the pie shrank from around 15% down to about 12%. And when even though we applied a slightly higher, we applied a 1.72 tax shift factor, the percentage that the commercial side was paying fell to, I believe it was something around 21.5%. So it fell by 4%. So when people saw their tax bills go up by 12%, it was the 3% that is effectively Prop 2.5 plus new growth, plus the 5% that was the debt exemption override for Pine Hill, plus that 4% shift. So every bit of currently zoned commercial property is essential to our tax base. Add to that what Nora said earlier about the potential to lose our split tax rate. If we lose our split tax rate, the average homeowner would see an instant increase of about $2,000 to the average home in Westwood. So this is vitally important. We have a unique opportunity to address this because we have the fire station hearing with FinCom at the end of April, where we will be talking about this. That gives us one more opportunity to have a public hearing on this and move this forward. So that is why I believe it's very important that we take this up. And Nora, I know you're going to lay out some options, but I thought it's very important for the public to understand why we're even considering this.
Thank you. So let me show you the 3 options, and there may be others for the board to consider. This first option is the option that I would recommend that the board strongly consider taking. What this would do is it would recommend an article to town meeting voters to impose density and size restrictions on nursing homes or convalescent homes and assisted living residences. For the nursing homes or convalescent homes, it would require the minimum property size to be 10 acres, and it would require a maximum of 2 beds per acre. This falls right in line. It's actually more dense than if you were to develop a nursing home component in a residential retirement community. In that case, I believe it's 1.5 beds per acre. The other section, assisted living residents, I would again recommend you have a minimum 10-acre lot size for that type of a facility, and then a maximum of 5 units per acre. That is identical to the residential retirement community section of the bylaw. Residential retirement community, assisted living, and nursing home are all allowed by Zoning Board of Appeals special permits within the ARO zone. And to give you an idea of what a residential retirement community is, something like Fox Hill Village, that's what they have been developed under. They have independent housing. They also have assisted living. What these 2 sections deal with is if you did not want to develop in a residential retirement community, which is a kind of a varied community made up of independent uses and assisted uses and possibly nursing homes. If you wanted to do just straight development of one or the other, something that would come that you could picture that this would be is something along the lines of the memory care facility at University Station, Bridges by Epic. That's an assisted, that's a nursing home, I believe, or they may call it assisted living facility specifically for residents who have Alzheimer's and memory care needs. And that is a 64-unit development on that property. So what, due to the size of this property, this is 15 acres. If you had something similar to that you could get a, if it was an assisted living facility, you could get about 76 units on that 15 acres. If it was a nursing home, you could get about 30 beds. So to give you an idea of the size of the facility that would be allowed if you adopted these or asked voters to adopt these changes to the bylaw. So it doesn't eliminate the use, but it makes the use not the most profitable use for a 15-acre parcel of land. It still allows it to happen, but it doesn't encourage it to go forward.
But it
So
doesn't,
that's option.
it doesn't restrict something like a homes at 45 over 55 development.
It does not. So that's something you could also tackle if you chose to. So right now, residential retirement community is what something like homes at 55 could be developed under. And that was the area, that was the section of the bylaw that was used for Fox Hill Village, but it could be used for something like the homes at 45 as well. If that section was used there, you could have 76, up to 76 single family style or duplex style homes on that property.
Nora,
So that's,
if I may,
go
I
ahead.
just want to reiterate for folks that, just to be clear, when we talk about assisted living or nursing homes, those are entities which do not go into the commercial tax column. They are on the residential side.
That's right. And when we've originally developed University Station, that had not yet been determined. And it was a question when we were reviewing that development. And we actually had put language into the development agreement in case the memory care facility that was constructed there ended up being taxed as residential. And sure enough, it was. So any assisted living facility like the one we have at Fox Hill Village and the one we have now at Bridges by Epic at University Station are taxed as residential properties. So this option one kind of disincentivizes these residential uses and encourages the continued commercial use of the property. So that's the first option. And that's what one of the options that the planning board did not have the ability to consider because of the way their ad was placed. This is the second option, which the planning board originally considered, was interested in going forward with until they realized that they couldn't do the two portions of it that we just discussed regarding nursing home and convalescent home and assisted living residents. So this option 2 has those two provisions that I just discussed, and then has a third provision, which the planning board had originally taken up, which was to revise the principal use chart to make a motel or hotel on 5 acres or more a special permit use in the ARO. In other words, to allow it to be considered by the zoning board in the ARO. So that was another provision that the planning board considered. It was the original impetus for the planning board's article in the first place. The planning board had a hearing and they heard from residents in the area on, I believe, 3 separate occasions at that hearing, 2 independent planning board hearings and 1 a hearing with the Finance and Warrant Commission, and they heard opposition from residents in the immediate area to addition of the hotel use. And for that reason, the planning board did not want to take it up alone, and they ended up withdrawing the article. So my recommendation is to stay with the first one and not introduce that at this time. However, I will point out that the planning board does intend to go back and take a look at adding a hotel at the next town meeting. And they want to take a look at some other things which I address in a third option for you to consider. That third option would do what these first 2 options did, put restrictions on nursing or convalescent home and assisted living residents, add motel or hotel on 5 acres or more as a special permit use, but then make other changes to areas such as the section of our bylaw that deals in buffer areas. We currently allow or require buffer areas in industrial districts and in highway business and local business districts, but for some reason our bylaw was never written to have any buffer zone in the administrative research office district. So that's something that the planning board is hoping to take up when it returns to the ARO zone at a future town meeting. I wrote the bylaw very broadly so that you can consider that if you want to. And then I have some suggestions for how you might add that to be 100-foot buffer applicable to administrative research office districts. So those are the three options that I have drafted, and I would recommend that you take up the first option, which is just making density restrictions on assisted living and and nursing home. And the reason I recommend that is that the planning board is willing and expressed their intention to take up the other issues at the next town meeting. And this one change would protect us against a zoning freeze application that comes in before the planning board has a chance to do that, by having these restrictions already in place. I will say that at the planning board hearing, the residents who came out were surprisingly strongly in favor of assisted living and nursing convalescent home uses at this location, despite the density that they could be without this restriction. But I believe the planning board understands the tax issues that are involved. And I think all of us understand the traffic implications that uses of a very large size of this type of use of assisted living or nursing home, 250 to 300 units, what that could have, what effect that could have. So despite the fact that residents in the neighborhood seem to be supportive of it, I have continuing concerns, and I would encourage the select board to consider an article that restricts these uses.
Nora, can I ask a question? You on your last sentence or a couple sentences there. On option one, you said this would protect a freeze. Is that correct?
It would protect us against a freeze. So right now, so since the planning board article has already run, that's already been introduced, and we've now advertised a new potential article from the select board. No one can do anything with this property that's contrary to either of those articles that are currently being discussed. While those articles are in play, since they've been advertised, as we're waiting to get to town meeting, if either of these articles go forward, no one could file an application after the date of the initial advertisement. No one could file an application to try and freeze the zoning on the properties within the ARO. So you would be protected if you chose to go forward with this article. Since the planning board has chosen not to go forward with its article, once that article is removed from the warrant, then there would be no protection under the planning board's advertised article. But because yours has now been advertised, the protection has begun. And if you decide to go forward with it, that protection will continue through town meeting. And if voters choose to implement the changes that you recommend, then that protection would be permanent.
And I understood you to say right now, there is no buffer zone if a hotel were to go there today.
There's no buffer zone in the section 6.3 of the zoning bylaw. Any of these uses are uses that would be reviewed by the zoning board of appeals for a special permit, and the zoning board of appeals could impose a buffer, but it would not be a hard and fast requirement. It would be at the discretion of the board. So the planning board is looking to take up ARO districts in their entirety and look at all the uses that are in those districts and determine what uses are beneficial, what uses they might want to add, and also look at buffer requirements, any other dimensional requirements, and take a closer look at that. But they don't have time to do that now. So they're looking to do that at a future town meeting.
If I recall correctly, didn't one member say it started on it in June?
I believe they're interested in beginning looking at this right away. Yes.
Thank you.
So I have a couple more questions, but Mary, I've already asked one, so or done some clarification. Marianne, do you have things that you would like to?
Go ahead, Rob. I
Sure.
have some things to say, but go ahead.
So Nora, let me just ask a couple questions. I believe I heard you say that the planning board originally wanted to move forward with what you have as option 2, which had both the hotel as well as the residential restrictions, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And the reason that couldn't go forward was because it was advertised as a commercial change only, correct?
Correct.
By us talking about this and them having to have this posted, as you've just said, that freezes things and gives them the opportunity to revisit the thing that they were in favor of doing initially.
Correct.
Okay. And then option 3 provides a buffer zone to help create both screening and some sound attenuation for the neighborhood, which would be a benefit to the neighborhood, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And I listened very closely to the public comment, and I heard a lot of really compelling commentary around traffic concerns. And my belief is that if a residential goes in there, you're going to have the same type of traffic concerns that you're going to have if a hotel use were to go in there. The traffic concern exists today because that area is used as a cut through from East Street down to Route 1. I believe there are things that we can and likely should do to help the residents in that neighborhood with respect to traffic mitigation that would help not only mitigate things that are happening today, but any future use at the Meditech property. So I would actually be very much in favor of option 3, because as I understand it, the hotel use also gets us the highest best use from a tax revenue perspective, because the hotel with the improvements would be paying a higher assessed value. So the commercial rate would be applied to a higher assessed value. You then get the personal property tax associated with that, and then we get hotels and meals tax as well. So I think there is, very compelling reason why we can proceed with option 3 while at the same time addressing many of the concerns that I've heard from the neighborhood.
So I agree with that, and I brought it before the planning board originally because I believe strongly that a hotel use is an appropriate use in the ARO zone, not just at this property that we're discussing on East Street that caused the impetus for this article, but at the other ARO zone on High Street. However, I do have concerns that we're going to the FinCom tomorrow night to discuss warrant articles, and the select board will have an opportunity to go back to the FinCom for its final vote on April 28th. But I do have concern at this point that a very broad article, like I had set out in option 3, will have a limited time for discussion. And I'm concerned that the limited time that remains available may not be sufficient to properly educate the public and receive balanced commentary on that article. And that's the reason why I'm recommending option 1. But I certainly support the thought of adding hotel as a possible use, and I certainly support the idea of adding buffer requirements in a future article that the planning board has indicated their interest in taking up.
Mary Ann, do you have any questions or comments?
I do. Thank you, Joe. Nora, thank you very much for taking us through that. I also listened to the planning board meeting at which this was discussed at length, and I heard all of the comments regarding traffic. I've spoken to some of the residents in that area, and Rob, I think it is important to acknowledge that there is a real issue there that we need to address and try to solve for. Because I agree, I think there are some things that we should be looking at to try to alleviate that situation. That said, this is a very important piece of property in Westwood, 15 acres. And we've talked, and I think it's helpful to talk and keep reminding folks and ourselves about the importance of the tax shift, how important that is to residents, and that this is really an issue of protecting the taxpayer in Westwood, that we want to protect residents by keeping this 15-acre parcel in that commercial column as to commercial taxes. So for that reason, I am very much in favor of what option 1 does, which adds protections, it adds requirements as to the residential uses. And while I think we should be very open to the best and greatest commercial uses of that property, I did hear the discussion of the planning board and their intent to be thoughtful about those commercial uses, including a hotel, but also in conjunction with, and I may not get the language right here, Nora, but conditions like buffer zones to be considered as part of that. And I do think we should be thoughtful, and to be frank, I'm a little uncomfortable as a select board member doing zoning unless it's something like the residential protections that we're talking about, which are necessary to protect the town, which I believe they are at this point. So for those reasons, and with the keeping in mind that the planning board has committed to revisiting the commercial use issue promptly, I would be in favor of option 1.
Thank you, Marianne. Why don't we take some comments from the public at this time?
Do you have a point of view you want to weigh in on?
I can, Rob. Yeah, I'm leaning the same way as Marianne is. This is between a rock and a hard place. I hear your argument loud and clear, Rob. It scares the dickens out of me. But I'm feeling more comfortable because if we act on this now, it sounds to me as though we impose some sort of freeze, number one. And number two, as Marianne said, and I listened to it as well, I'm impressed with the enthusiasm to address this sooner and later. And it may be something, hopefully, if we can do at our fall town meeting. And I'm also concerned about Fire Station 1 at town meeting and what's going to happen during this whole town meeting. So I'm leaning towards option 1 at this time, but I'm certainly willing to hear some additional discussion on it. So Rob, let me see if I can do a couple of these.
Well, the only other thing that I would add is that I believe the 2 members of the planning board who were in favor of it and a minority vote, given that the entire planning board seemed to be in favor of what is option 2 and what Nora has presented to us, those 2 would be rolling off, and we cannot guarantee that whoever replaces them would necessarily be of like mind.
I concur. So with that, Rob, I'm going to go to public comment here.
You have
First
2
one-
comments in the Q&A and 2 hands up in the attendees.
Yeah. Let me try Ada here. This is Ada Zong, 73 Partridge Drive. Nora, I know you haven't heard anything from Meditech. I'm wondering if learning about Meditech's plans for the property at 131 East Street could help with our zoning plan. Just want you to know that I'm reaching out to Meditech to learn about their plans for the next 3 to 6 years, and I am waiting a response.
I would
Thank you.
doubt that Meditech is going to reveal their corporate plans with respect to a property like that. And quite frankly, their plans keep it as is. So there wouldn't be a project, right? All this is zoning for a future use. So if Meditech is going to hold on to the property for the next 3 to 6 years, they are under no obligation to answer any questions as to how they're going to continue to use that property. And I just know that if I were the CFO of a property like that, and I were paying the type of taxes that I'm paying, and the building were empty, sooner or later, I'd want to find a better way to maximize our bottom line.
Could I just
Thank you.
also point out that this is about zoning? It's about the ARO district, which is 4 parcels, not just the parcel on East Street, but 3 other parcels off of High Street.
Thank you,
Mr.
Nora.
Chair, if I may.
Excuse me a minute, Chris, but I skipped over Rick Strauss. And I'd like to read his, and then I'll come back to you.
No problem.
Yeah. Rick Strauss wrote, would the developer be responsible for the increased costs for sewer and water requirements to the property? I have no idea. Does anybody have an idea?
Yes, every developer covers the cost of development.
Thank you. Chris, back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I know that Ms. Zong did not indicate that she, when she contacted Meditech, that she was representing the town, but just as a reminder, she's not representing the town in official capacity. When she's reaching out to the property owner, she's reaching out as an individual or resident of the community, but not a representative of the town.
Glad you got that on the record. Thank you, Chris. Next one is Ira Maloney. I think we should, and my apologies, we should concentrate on the fire station. Second comment from that person was Station 1 on the spring town meeting. Leslie Maloney. I'm sorry, Leslie. Thank you very much.
Leslie, your address, please.
It's read down below, 91 Hemlock Drive.
All right, let me try this one. Dear Ada Zong, Partridge, 73 Partridge. Dear Select Board members Robert Gotti and Marianne, since you watched the last planning board public hearing, you must know the neighborhood next to Meditech property, 131 East Street, home to many kids who walk to school and who no school bus service or sidewalks. A hotel would increase the traffic and put children's safety at risk at a certain scale. A hotel is constructed on the Meditech property. How much tax revenue would it generate at the cost of children's safety? Can you please be specific? I don't think anybody can be specific to that. Does anybody want to take a shot?
Well, first, I'll go back to say the traffic is an issue now for all those very same kids who are walking to and from school and are playing out in front of their houses. So that is a legitimate and important concern for those residents. I went down there Saturday morning and sat for 2 hours and had a lengthy conversation with a number of folks and talked about a number of ideas that are progressively in or out of our control as you know, you go to something like, you know, there's an idea, could we close the bottom of the street at Carroll Ave to not go out onto Route 1? Well, that's a state issue, right? We don't have direct control over that. But there are things within our control that I've talked to Chris about, that he's talking to Todd about, so that we can come back with, you know, a proposed plan. But I think, Chris, you had talked to Chief Silva, and they're going to get a digital camera down there, digital speed sign, to be able to collect data so that we get both volume and speed data on Carroll Ave?
Yes, there'll be some work done by the police department to put a speeds count down there. We'll have a digital speed indicator or speed limit sign, as well as a camera to collect some information, some preliminary data the board can use to discuss any potential future ideas for that area.
And there is, I don't know what the marginal incremental traffic increase would be if a hotel went in versus a 230 unit assisted living or some other facility. I think, you know, we need to address the traffic issue as the traffic issue, and then we need to address the zoning issue as a zoning issue to ensure the best use from a commercial perspective.
But I also just add,
I'm sorry.
traffic is comparative to the use, as Rob was suggesting. So right now, the use is an office use, but the building is vacant. So the use is not being used to its greatest extent. A new user could come in there and restart the office use without a zoning change, and there would be traffic associated with that. They could also change the use to another use that's already allowed in the ARO district, such as an indoor commercial recreation use, or a medical marijuana facility, or a large child care center, or a religious or education facility. There are a whole bunch of uses that are already permitted that all have independent traffic needs that would all be assessed if a project was to go forward on any of those. So traffic is relative. All of the different possibilities have different traffic parameters. And if there are any uses that would be considered special permit uses by the Zoning Board of Appeals, the ZBA would review the traffic concerns and would adjust the project to properly address those traffic concerns.
Yes, and I think, when I talked to the residents the other day, that somebody brought up a recreational use like an ice rink or an indoor sports facility of some sort. And that would actually exacerbate the traffic because if you want to think about what a use like that would be, just come out onto 109 anytime there's a soccer field change in the middle of the fall, right? Traffic is backed up every hour as they swap out which group is playing on the fields. So I think Nora's point is well taken. That office building, if it were used as an office, would have increased traffic because right now there's nobody in there. And I've even talked to, at the state level, the director from the Economic Development Office and said, hey, if you happen to know of a corporate headquarters looking to move into the state from out of state or somebody who's outgrown their current facility, we might have an opportunity. It's not for sale yet, but there might be an opportunity. So, there are things like that, I'm not advocating that we turn this tomorrow into a hotel. I'm saying that we zone it so that we make it a possibility. So if that were something that was attractive, that would allow for a highest and best use from a tax revenue perspective. And it really wouldn't change the traffic because I want to address the traffic separate and apart from what goes in there.
Okay, I'm Rob, I'm gonna take over here for a minute. I see we have some hands up, but before I do, I have to be honest, I'm leaning more and more towards option one. Now, for one particular reason is I don't want to shoot from the hip. And I think we're doing that with the traffic study. I think it's great, Rob, that you got the ball rolling on looking at Carroll Ave. But Nora, correct me if I'm wrong, isn't Cherry Street the closest street to this parcel?
It's Elm or Cherry. I don't have a map in front of me, so let me see what the
It's probably
closest
Elm. I mean, I would narrow it down to there are a number of streets involved down here. I think we need a more comprehensive look at it. I just don't want to shoot from the hip. And that's why I'm thinking that
I'm not shooting from the hip as far as the traffic goes. I'm saying we study it.
Yeah.
There are
Right.
two streets that are in and out onto East Street from the neighborhood and one street that is out onto Route 1. So there are a number of things that we might consider in a future as the road commissioners at a future select board meeting to be able to address the very real and legitimate concerns of the residents of that neighborhood regarding traffic and safety for their kids.
and those two streets that exit onto East Street would be Cherry and Elm, correct, Rob?
Correct. That's right. Yes.
Why don't we get some folks who've been waiting patiently here? Tish, can we hear from Michael Didarian? He has his hand up. And Rob, can you give me some of the readings after this?
My pleasure.
Thanks.
Believe it or not, there's nothing in there.
Hi, everyone. How are you? My name is Mike Didarian. I live at 211 School Street, which is in the Islington neighborhood. First off, thank you for everybody on this call who's participated on this call, for all the hard work and the public service. It's what makes Westwood, a great town to live in. On this issue, I have two brief comments. First, I'm happy to hear that the select board is considering capping the residential use in the ARO district. I think that is very, very important for the reasons we discussed tonight, for the reasons that the planning board discussed last week. I think we do need to disincentivize that use because we are not prepared for a very large, facility to move in there. Second, in terms of the proposal to rezone ARO for hotel use, I just, what I'm thinking at this point is I'm very sensitive to the concerns Rob is raising. Over the past 2 weeks, I have walked around my area of town, knocking on doors, collecting signatures, talking to a lot of residents about some of the issues and impacts that may affect them in the next year or two. I did note two things that stood out. One was a lot of people sort of on the other side of Washington Street. So not the neighborhoods that are directly abutting the property we're speaking about, but on the other side of Washington Street, most of the residents I talked to, and again, that's a pretty large sample size, were unaware of sort of the proposal to rezone the area for hotel use. A small portion had sort of heard rumblings of what was going on, but kind of did not have any knowledge about it. So I would stress what I think Nora said and Mary Ann said in terms of to rezone this parcel for hotel use. I think there needs to be a longer time and more of an educational outreach to the area. I will say that, you know, while I did get mixed reactions in terms of those who were in support, those who were not in support, you know, there were a substantial amount that who were not in support, and they were very passionate about that. And so I do have concerns about moving too quickly and having this become the big issue at the town meeting with all the other important issues that are always already on the table. So I do think that, you know, that parcel is a great opportunity for a commercial use that will benefit our tax base and benefit the town. But I do think, you know, for the reasons kind of we've all gone over tonight, that the most prudent course is to have the planning board continue with its work of exploring the potential uses of the land, the impacts, and conducting that outreach to the community that I know has happened in the past couple of weeks, but I think there needs to be more of an extensive effort to educate people so that, you know, we can move forward and the town can pass what they want to pass at a town meeting. So thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Well said. Next, we have Phil Shapiro. Phil, welcome back. I hope.
Yeah. Unmute
There
yourself. There.
There we go. Okay. Didn't pop up for a while there, Joe.
Okay. Thanks, Phil.
I want to echo some of the discussion tonight, and just on the split tax rate and its importance to sustained affordability in the town. That, you know, and I want to. So I was chairman of the Business Development Advisory Board in the 1990s, and we were dealing with, you know, back offices on University Avenue that created very, very little value, huge potential, but very, very little value. And when they built the parking garage at Route 128, they really, because before that was just a big mud puddle. I mean, it was unbelievable. So the whole process for University Station took over 20 years from, you know, the start of an idea to actually, you know, noticeable changes in the tax shift, you know, in the amount of commercial property. And these are long-term issues that that you have to do everything you can to facilitate, to make it as easy as possible for commercial development, in order to keep up with. Commercial development really doesn't have the same tools that residential. I mean, residential goes up just because, you know, there's a shortage of housing in a beautiful town like Westwood, and all of a sudden everybody's living in $1 million house. So, you know, on the commercial side, there's much more competition. You know, we've got places like Norwood that do not have a split tax rate that we're competing with. So we really have to do whatever we can on an ongoing basis to ensure that we protect and expand the commercial property in the town. And, you know, whether that's option 1 or option 3 or option 1 today and option 3 tomorrow or whatever, I think it's very, very helpful to have the select board focusing on this and looking at these issues on an ongoing and sort of an anticipatory basis, because yes, the property isn't for sale today. Maybe it is in 6 months or a year or 2 years, but when it comes up for sale, having the most flexibility and the easiest possible path to commercial development is very, very important for every taxpayer in the town, every residential taxpayer in the town. And
Excuse me,
I
Phil?
yes.
Yeah. Only because of your extensive experience in the town, having worked with you on a few boards. Your 3 minutes is up. I'm going to give you another minute and a half simply because of your experience that you bring to the table tonight.
Thank you, Jim. Yes, I was an assessor, and we've had, and treasurer, and we've had these discussions with many hats. I've worn many hats, and the town and the selectmen over many years have done whatever we could to preserve a little bit of flexibility in the tax shift, and also to encourage maximization and density where we can on the commercial side. The first version of University Station was much more dense than the second version, and would have created much more value. I think I just want to support and encourage you as a board to continue to move this forward in some way, to be ready for when this parcel is up for sale. And I appreciate all your efforts in this. Thank you.
Phil, thank you so much, and I'll publicly thank you right now. You've been a great contributor to this town on many, many different levels, and I've always had a high degree of respect for your opinion on these issues. So thank you so much, Phil.
My pleasure.
Anybody in your queue, Rob? Looks like
Sorry
one.
about that. There is one in the Q&A from Fran Fusco, 20 Pine Lane. If we are so concerned about the commercial split tax rate, won't the MBTA dense zoning affect us even worse? Why are we putting 206 apartments at 22 Everett Street if town is concerned about a split tax rate? A tiny portion of that will be commercial. Why did we allow condos at Clabber Tree when you could have zoned for commercial to help with the commercial tax rate? So I believe, Nora, you answered what the effect was at 22 Everett Street on Thursday night's planning board call, or was it whenever it was?
Tuesday night.
Tuesday
Yep.
night. Yeah, sorry about that. So why don't you talk a little bit about the answer you gave there?
Sure. So redevelopment of the Everett Street property was necessary to benefit the town, to benefit it through tax dollars, but also to benefit it through the provision of additional housing, especially affordable housing. Both of those are needs in our town. We need to be fiscally responsible, but we also need to provide for residents who need some assistance with their housing. We also, in that case, had a need to clean up a Superfund site. It was Westwood's longest running Superfund site. So the development was supported by the town, by the planning board, by the select board, and it went forward in a positive manner. That is a mixed use development. That's not a standalone residential development. So where that property prior to development had very low tax value and very low tax payments, they were on the commercial side, but they were significantly low for a degraded and underutilized property. The new taxes we will see once the project is done and the tax assessors can get in there and actually evaluate what it will be based on the uses that go in there. But this property contains, I believe it's about 15,000 square feet of commercial use on the ground floor in addition to the residential uses. All of that's new to the property. All of that will be positive, and more positive than if that property was developed for a standalone residential use. The mixed use will end up benefiting the town, and the affordable units that come along with it will end up benefiting the town and fulfilling our housing production plan.
And further, that went to help satisfy the requirements under the MBTA housing law, correct? Which kept
It
us in
did.
compliance.
Right. We had no choice but to comply with the MBTA communities law. So I know that there are some residents who would have loved to have just not gone that route, as some of the other towns in the Commonwealth did. We chose to comply, and that was a significant portion of the land we needed to comply.
Another job well done by the planning board.
I have no comment on the second half of Ms. Fusco's question. Why did we allow condos at Cloudwood Tree when you could have zoned for commercial to help with that? I was not involved, so I can't really speak to that. That project was well underway before I joined the planning board.
So I can say that rezoning a single parcel in the middle of a residential area to a commercial use would likely have been spot zoning and would not be something that we would recommend. That property was a former healthcare facility in a resident, it was a non-conforming use in a residential district, a single 20-acre lot. And there was no nearby adjacent commercial zone to join it to. So I don't think we could have rezoned that for commercial use.
Thank you.
One more hand raised, Mr. Chair. Ms. Wallace has her hand up in the attendees list.
Can we allow her in?
I thank you. I'll be brief. I think limiting the housing density is necessary and completely appropriate, and I support what option 1 would indicate. I think making decisions on what the zoning should look like beyond that needs to be left with the planning board. And they have absolutely committed to tackle this right after town meeting. And I think they will have robust and very considerate discussions as it relates to the neighborhood. And I think it's regardless of who gets elected, there'll still be a majority of the board there that are committed to continuing this work. So we need to leave the zoning issues to the planning board. Thank you.
All right. Before we go any further, Chris, I need some guidance. We've got this down as
Sorry, Mr. Chair, point of order. There's one last comment in
thanks,
the Q&A from Maureen White, 568 Canton Street. She says, I agree that more thought and discussion needs to happen prior to moving forward. I understand the commercial versus the residential tax rate. Thoughtful discussion by planning board last week. Thank you.
Thanks, Rob. Chris, my question is, we've got this down for select board 13. Is that miscellaneous 13?
So that would be miscellaneous. So the way we have this down, Mr. Chair, it is down as we'd be using the miscellaneous article. The board currently has 2 remaining, I believe, Tish, is that correct? 2 remaining. So you'd use, the board would need to use one of those miscellaneous articles for this item, this matter.
Okay,
6 and 7, miscellaneous 6 and 7 are remaining.
thanks, Tish. Okay, so does that affect how we, if someone proposes a motion here, how we?
I think it's proposed that we use miscellaneous article number 6 for select board article 13.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you, Marion. Marion, are you, I think we've covered the discussion fairly well on this. Are you interested in making a motion?
I am, and I just want to say I really appreciate this discussion, the thoughtfulness that's gone into it. Thank you, Nora. And you know, although we may not always agree as a board, I think we are all trying to do what's in the best interest of the town. And I think it's very important that this discussion continue at the planning board level. With that, I am going to move that the board use miscellaneous article number 6 to create select board article 13 relative to the zoning bylaw amendments relative to the Administrative Research Office District, using option 1 as proposed.
Before I second that, I appreciate all of the discussion and the input. My priority was ensuring that this is protected. I wanted to also highlight the fact that this was something that the planning board supported over the course of a number of hearings and only withdrew because of an administrative requirement. And us talking about this and then having to have a future planning board hearing related to other bylaws that were required for the flood reason were the reason I thought that would give them the opportunity to address it this year prior to this year's town meeting. I will not stand in the way of protecting our commercial property. So with that, I will second the motion as made.
Thank you, Rob, and thanks for the extra work you did on this. Mary Ann,
Aye.
Rob,
Aye.
I vote aye as well. The motion carries. Thank you all who joined in and participated. Next, we move to Fire Station 1 update. I think this is you, Molly. Is that correct?
Point of order, Joe. I think we've got a few more articles we've got to go through. We've got an article to be removed, Select Board 10, street acceptance. Am I right, Pat?
Okay, yep, you're right. Thank you.
That's correct.
I'm happy to read that, Joe, if
Yeah, I skipped ahead too far. Go ahead, please.
sure. So, or Pat, did you want to take this?
No, go ahead.
Okay. After an investigation of the street layout and discussion with town staff, more time is needed to review the request for street acceptance for Birch Lane. So this article should be removed. And this article may be revisited for the 2026 annual town meeting.
Mr. Chair, if I can just add to that.
Please.
So we did have a conversation with two residents from this area. So they're fully aware of what's happening, and the town will continue to work with those residents on this matter. So if the next annual town meeting would be the first opportunity for this matter to be presented, the idea is to be prepared for that. If there's an opportunity prior to that, if the board were to call for some other action prior to next May, we're looking to work with the residents to have that matter prepared for any future town meeting.
Thank you, Chris. And Mary Ann, the second one was the
Mr. Chairman, point of order. I think you should take them one motion at a time, sir.
okay.
I'm happy to move that the select board remove Select Board Article 10 as to the street acceptance for Birch Lane.
Second that motion.
Roll call, Mary Ann,
Aye.
Rob,
Aye.
I vote aye as well. Motion carries. Now, this brings us up to Article PB4.
Right. We need to.
Yes, Mr.
remove
Chair, we have recommendation from the planning board. The planning board did take action and did vote to withdraw two of their articles, Planning Board 4 and Planning Board 5. I believe the board has already discussed Planning Board 5 article, which was the ARO. And Planning Board 4 was a zoning bylaw and or zoning map amendments relative to mixed use and multifamily residential overlay district.
All right, anyone want to make a motion on that?
Sure.
Is there any discussion? Let me make sure. No.
Pat, if I could, point of order, should the motion on removal be one at a time as well, or could we do both?
Yeah,
One at a time?
I would.
You bet. I hereby move that this board remove Planning Board Article number 4 from the warrant.
Second that motion.
Roll call, Mary Ann,
Aye.
Rob,
Aye.
I vote aye as well.
I also move that this board remove Planning Board Article number 5 from the warrant.
Roll call. Second, do I have a second?
Second that motion.
Roll call, Mary Ann,
Aye.
Rob,
Aye.
I vote aye as well. Okay,
And then we've got, Joe, language for to support Planning Board Articles 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, and 3. Is that it? 4 and 5?
6 and 7.
6 and 7.
6 and 7. Okay.
okay, and what steps do we need to do there, Chris?
I believe you can vote to support those moving forward to the FinCom in town meeting, unless someone disagrees with me.
Okay, is there any?
One at a time?
No, I think you can do them in mass.
Excellent. I will move that we vote to support the language for planning board articles 1 through 7.
Just point of clarification.
One
Yeah.
through 4, 6, and 7.
Yes.
Sorry, 1 through 4, 6, and 7. Thank you.
Second that motion.
Sorry, excuse
No,
me, it's 1 through 3.
1 through 3, 6 and
Six and
7, I
seven.
think
Sorry.
is the correct.
Yep.
My apologies, people.
No,
Sorry.
It's
No.
late, everyone
I
understands.
accept those friendly amendments.
And I'll
1 through 3, 6, and 7. My apologies.
second the amended.
Roll call, Marianne,
Aye.
Rob,
Aye.
I vote aye as well. And Marianne, no apologies necessary. I skipped way ahead. Thank you for catching me there. I'm not trying to rush the meeting. Are we up to FS1 update?
I think we are.
Praise the
Yes,
Lord.
Mr. Chair.
Thanks, Chris.
I will be very brief. I just want to make sure that the community was aware of a couple of dates. The FS1 project will be presented at Fox Hill Village on Wednesday, April 2nd at 10:30 a.m. And then there's a collaboration between the Westwood Public Library and the Westwood Fire Department for an event on Saturday, April 5th. It'll start with a firefighter-themed story time at 10:30, followed by a meet and greet with firefighters and touch a truck outside. And members of the FS1 working group will be there to answer questions that anybody might have about the department or about the project. We'll be presenting for a number of boards and committees over the next several weeks. And just as a reminder that FS1 will not be discussed in detail at tomorrow's FinCom public hearing. It will be discussed at the April 28th FinCom public hearing.
Thank you, Molly. Any questions or discussion on that? All right, that brings us up to liaison reports.
Appointments and reappointments, Joe.
Oh, that's right. Thank you. Chris, do you want to take the appointments there?
Sure, Mr. Chair. Just for the board's benefit and the community's benefit, this is regarding the Historical Commission. And we're looking to fill a vacancy. One of the challenges that we've had with the Historical Commission is, unfortunately, they have not been able to meet due to lack of quorum. So one of the benefits of this would be provide the Historical Commission with at least the minimum numbers, and we'll continue to look for some additional residents to fill in other vacancies as needed. But Joe and I and Nora met with a resident, Beth. Am I pronouncing her name Tulja? Am I pronouncing that correctly?
I believe it's Toulouse.
Toulouse, thank you. Beth Toulouse. So I apologize, Beth, for that. Very excited person who's very interested in the Historical Commission. Also was very proud to say that she lives in a home that was built in the 1700s. So it's before the board this evening to the recommendation from us is to recommend Beth to the Historical Commission for the board's consideration.
Any discussion? I see there is, I think there's a question.
Nope, I don't see any question nor hands. Unless I'm missing something, but
Oh, you're right. You're right. Thank you. Anybody want to make any discussion? I thought the woman was wonderful that we chatted with.
Agreed, and with gratitude to Beth for stepping up and volunteering, I move that we appoint Beth Toulouse as a member of the Historical Commission for a 3-year term to expire on June 30, 2027.
I second that motion. And Mr. Chair, I'd like to point out the hand you saw was your own. Look in the mirror, look in the window. It's late, getting late, man.
It's gonna be the glasses, Rob. Someone's gonna provide. Wait a minute, let me lower the hand.
There was a motion and a second.
Roll call. Marianne.
Aye.
Rob.
Aye.
I vote aye as well. Motion carries. Oh, Damn window. Okay. I think next we have liaison reports. Have I caught up to where we were?
I do not have anything to report.
Nor I.
I do. I'll report on the off-leash dog park. We held a meeting on March 6th, March 19th. The meeting at March 6th was held at the Hanlon. We received input from parents of the children who attend that school. We also heard from the principal. We discussed the language for the annual town meeting relative to Chapter 184 bylaw changes. There were concern raised regarding additional languages being needed for 184, thanks to Nora. And then on 3/19, we had a meeting and I explained that I received a number of letters. I'm not sure if you folks got them or not. I received a number of letters regarding the changes to 184. I explained to the folks at that meeting, myself and another committee member, that these were simply proposals. We had not fully vetted them. We had not discussed them. We had not voted on them. And that committee members did not want to proceed with changes to the bylaw 184 until we had actually selected an acceptable site and voted on then we could vote on the exact language changes that we would want. So therefore, we will not be presenting an article to change 184 at this annual town meeting. We realized more work had to be done on the language at the actual and locating the actual site, as well as getting more input from the community before going forward. So we're currently working on those goals, and that's my report. If you have any questions? Nora, thanks for your help with that.
Mr. Chair, there was one question unrelated to any of the items on the agenda that is in the Q&A. I will let you take a look at it and determine whether or not it is pertinent to tonight's meeting agenda.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to summarize this. Basically, it's in regards to, and Rob, this is really up your alley, but we don't have it on the agenda. I prefer not to discuss it tonight, perhaps at a later time. But this is Fran Fusco, 20 Pine Lane, looking for an update on the Norwood Hospital. And
It's only up my alley in that I did attend the public hearing that was held by the Department of Public Health over in Norwood about Norwood Hospital. However, I believe what Ms. Fusco is referencing is that since then, I believe the town administrator in Norwood has organized a working group of some sort to try to pressure the state to accelerate the redevelopment of the hospital. And so I believe that is what she's talking about. I can't say that I have participated in any of those meetings. So, and I believe there may also be a working group here in town where there's some people working on it related to the hospital. I don't have enough details on that, but I do believe there are some folks who have, put together some energy behind it as well. So with
Point of
that,
order, Mr. Chairman, if I may.
sure.
Legitimate concern being raised, but it's not on the agenda, and any discussion would put you at risk for an open meeting law violation without it being on the agenda. I recommend that you put it on a future agenda to have an open and frank discussion of the process.
Thank you. And Rob, thank you for what you've done on that.
I was just trying to translate Ms. Fusco's question for clarity. That's all.
Let me see.
Can I say something?
You may, Steve.
There's a website, finishthejobnorwood.com. It gives all the updates. And the last couple of meetings that they've had scheduled with the area chiefs and town administrators have been canceled. So there really isn't an update to give.
Thank you. I guess, thank you very much, Steve. All right. Any other discussions on that? Marianne, do you have a question?
No, I just wanted to bring a motion on the minutes if you're ready
Please.
for that.
Yep.
I'm happy to move that we approve the regular meeting minutes for February 24, 2025 as written.
Second that motion.
Roll call. Marianne,
Aye.
Rob?
Aye.
I vote aye as well. Our next meeting will be April 7th, 2025, 6 p.m. via remote.
Point of order, I actually have the very same question that I see you tilting your head on, Joe. Chris or Pat, do we have any knowledge as to what the legislature has done with respect to making this a permanent feature?
The last thing I saw on it was on the governor's desk. I don't know, an extension through, I
June
think
of
June 30th,
27.
2027
Yeah.
is on the governor's desk. I don't believe it's been signed yet. I've not seen anything that says it's been signed.
I believe it was sent to the governor. The legislature voted on last Thursday, March 20th. And I believe the governor has 10 days. I don't know if it's from March 20th or the 21st, but the governor has 10 days to react. But it was part of the governor's Municipal Empowerment Act to support this. So we're hoping for the governor to sign it as quickly as she can.
So Chris, why don't we continue with the intention of holding this via Zoom? But if March 30th that is not signed, does that give us enough time to put something up on the portal and to secure a site?
Yes, it does, Mr. Chair.
Okay, great. Rob, Marion, do you guys agree with that?
Yes.
I'm good with that.
Okay. All right, and Stephanie, are you all set, or did you want to say something?
No, I'm all set. Thank you, though.
Nice to see you. Perfect, thank you. All right, let's move on. Select Board will be going into executive session to discuss one issue pursuant to General Laws, Chapter 30A, Section 21A3, to discuss strategy with respect to potential litigation involving the property at 637 High Street, discussion of which would have a detrimental effect on the position of the governing body if the discussion were in open session. The board will not be returning to open session. Is there anybody want to make a motion?
I move that we go into executive session for the aforementioned reason.
I second that motion.
Roll call. Mary Ann?
Aye.
Rob?
Aye.
I vote aye as well. Thank you, everyone.
Good night,
Thank you.
everyone.
Have a good night, everyone.